Chapter 55. While the Kyushu battlefield was in full swing, on the other side of the earth, there were also several gazes watching this island that was caught in the war. Brother, I didn't expect you to lend Avalon to Euphemia. This wasn't in the plan. Cornelia looked with slight surprise at the airship on the screen that was covering the bomber group. Sknetzel smiled slightly and said indifferently, "It's just a coincidence. If it wasn't for Missy's arrival, I'm afraid I would have followed Avalon to the 11th district." So brother is also going to the 11th district? Cornelia asked back. Sknetzel nodded. Yes. General Bartley found something that father is very concerned about in the 11th district. Oh? So, I'm the one who ruined your good fortune, Sknetzel? Your Highness Sknetzel. Mimi, who was sitting to the side, shifted her gaze from the screen to Sknetzel. But Sknetzel shook his head. No, there's no such thing. Missy, General Bartley has already followed Avalon to the 11th district. I believe that even without my existence, General Bartley will handle the affairs there very well. Bartley? Royal brother has taken in a good helper. Cornelia muttered to herself for a moment and immediately understood the matter between Sknetzel and Bartley. Presumably, Bartley, who had seriously neglected his duty in the assassination of Clovis, was saved by Sknetzel at the moment of his execution. Otherwise, Sknetzel wouldn't have trusted Bartley so much to handle the affairs of the 11th district alone. Sknetzel glanced at the battle situation on the screen. After a little analysis in his mind, he came to the conclusion that as long as the current offensive was steadily maintained, the victory would inevitably belong to Euphemia. That's right, Cornelia. Taking advantage of the fact that you, the governor of the 11th district, and Missy are also here, I think it's necessary to clarify some things buried in the 11th district. Sknetzel's words made Mimi and Cornelia look at him together. Miss He, who already knew the details, just nodded slightly. She knew that Schnauzer was doing this to gain Cornelia's trust. He's an unfathomable man. Unfortunately, he only lacks a mask. Mimi made a simple conclusion about Sknetzel in her mind, then calmly waited for Sknetzel's performance. Ruins? From Sknetzel's explanation, Cornelia learned that the Britannia Empire strategy was actually centered around the ruins scattered across the world. Yes, although I don't understand why Imperial Father would do this. There must be some other meaning behind it. Don't you agree, Missy? Seeing that it was about time, Sknetzel kicked the football to Mimi. Ruins? I don't know. What I know is that your emperor is planning something big. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about the battle in 9 regions. Under Mimi's reminder, Cornelia, who was concerned about 9 regions, no, it should be said that she was concerned about Euphemia, immediately refocused her attention on the 9 regions battlefield. Seeing this, Sknetzel didn't pursue it too much. Instead, just like Cornelia, he was concerned about the situation on the 9 regions battlefield. Missy, those people you mentioned, will they appear? Sknetzel's eyes flickered a few times, then he looked sideways at Mimi and asked. Mimi confidently smiled. They will. Look, haven't they already appeared? The screen suddenly flickered a few times, as if it was disturbed by some kind of interference. There were some interference fluctuations. Then, the moment the picture regained its stability, the black torrent appeared again. That's Shantian Lianshan. Seeing those black KFMs slowly pouring out from the underground exits all over the city, Cornelia immediately couldn't sit still. Missy, you should have a way to return to the 11th district in a short time, right? Wait, it's too early to go back now. Unexpectedly, Mimi flatly refused Cornelia's request. Her Highness Cornelia, I know you're worried about Her Highness Euphemia, but now it's not the time yet. Mimi's voice hasn't fallen yet. A burst of whistling sound suddenly set off over the 9 regions battlefield was transmitted through the communication channel to the ears of everyone on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Boom, boom, boom. Euphemia was not as weak as Cornelia imagined. As a witness of the tragic battle of Changtian Lianshan, she naturally knew that if the black torrent wantonly collided everywhere, the result would be the defeat of the Britannia Empire. Therefore, the old trick of Chantian Lianshan was once again used. In the previous air raid, the bomber group, which had been holding back 30% of their strength, finally received the order to attack with full force issued by Euphemia. The bombers that had launched an all-out attack had emptied all of their aerial bombs and missiles. In the blink of an eye, the sky above Fukuoka City was occupied by the roar of bombs and missiles tearing through the air. The iron lumps scattered all over the sky. It was a torrential downpour of air-to-ground missiles. All of these scenes chilled the hearts of the rebel soldiers. Boom! Explosion. The dazzling light, which symbolized death, burst out one after another in the black torrent. Unfortunately, although the effect of the full-force bombing was quite powerful, the enemy seemed to have absorbed the experience of the previous battle with Changtian Lianshan. In the first moment, the black torrent was divided into several groups and rushed at full speed toward the landing points of the Britannia Empire. This is... After seeing this situation, Royd exclaimed in surprise. "Royd, say it." Euphemia heard Royd's exclamation and immediately asked, "Deputy Governor." "There's good news and bad news." Royd blinked and said with a smile, "Say it. Since the abyssal bodies have appeared, then there's no better news." Euphemia was straightforward and didn't give Royd a chance to keep her in suspense. Royd raised his eyebrows and said briefly, "These abyssal bodies are different from the ones we encountered in Chang'an Lianshan last time. Based on the analysis of their behavior, it seems that someone is hiding behind them and controlling their actions through some means. This is bad news, but it's also good news. At least, Kay and Lancelot won't face the huge number of enemies we predicted." "Is that so?" Euphemia nodded and looked at the staff officer. "Let the second wave of bombers seize the time." "Yes, Your Highness." Although Euphemia wanted Avalon to move forward now and open a path for Lancelot before the new wave of bombers arrived, Avalon couldn't move forward and keep up with Lancelot's footsteps. Everything depended on Lancelot and Portman, who was approaching the shore along the seabed. "Is the first wave over?" Standing on the beach of Xionggu Island, Lancelot looked across the sea at the city that was engulfed in a sea of fire and the black bodies that were surging endlessly in the raging flames. "It's them again. Kai, looks like they've really caught up." The White Cat State Zero, who hadn't said a word since the beginning of the battle, finally spoke. Moreover, the white fur on its body was also standing up. It was angry. Ray Minkai, who felt something but couldn't figure it out, was silent for a while. After a while, he sent a message to the Portman troops lurking around Xionggu Island to act according to the plan. Lancelot immediately activated the flying wing system and rushed into the blue sky again. There's still 80% energy left. The first wave should be enough. The moment Lancelot rushed into the sky, Ray Minkai also subconsciously glanced at the energy consumption situation. "Kai, they're coming." The White Cat State Zero's eyes narrowed into a thin line, and its voice became full of murderous intent. Swoosh! A beam of light hit the energy light shield that Lancelot had just deployed in the blink of an eye. Speed of light attack? Ray Minkai's expression became solemn, and his eyes searched around the raging sea of fire. Swoosh! 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 In a breath, several beams of light broke through the sea of fire and hit Lancelot's energy light shield. TSK. There are quite a lot of them, but not all of them. Ray Minkai's eyes quickly wandered around the sea of fire a few times and confirmed that there were only about 10 black bodies that could shoot light attacks. With such a number, Lancelot could deal with it alone. However, in order to save energy, Ray Minkai decided to share the enemy's coordinates with Portman, who was lurking underwater, and let them deal with the light beam bodies that were further away from Lancelot. Swoosh! Swoosh! Following the instructions of the data link shared by Lancelot, Portman's troops, who had been waiting for a long time, jumped out of the water one after another. They formed small formations and attacked the enemy that they had locked onto, as well as the only light battleships of the rebels that were docked at the dock. Da-da-da-da. Jumping out of the water, Portman, who stood on the ground, kept shooting at the enemy. Splash! Under the water, white water lines quickly drew a moving trajectory on the surface of the sea and plunged into the bodies of the battleships docked at the dock. Boom! The violent explosion set off by the powerful torpedo instantly engulfed the only battleships of the rebels, leaving only the burning wreckage powerlessly telling the fact that a battleship had once stopped here. Portman's troops were very active, so active that even the surrounding enemies could not ignore their presence, and thus sent more troops to this side. However, before the enemy could intercept Portman's troops, they still needed to pass through a checkpoint. Ray Minkai raised his hand and pressed the emergency energy usage mode, using all the remaining energy for combat and communication. Then, in the dimly lit cockpit, Ray Minkai's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. State 0. This is the enemy you mentioned, right? The wind whistled. It was a hook. It was a hook launched by the rogue that had rushed to Lancelot's front. Dang! It was the energy light shield on Lancelot's left arm that easily blocked the surprise attack. Yes, they are the enemies that destroyed our homeland. The White Cat State 0 bared its sharp fangs and claws and shouted with a ferocious expression. Clang! The moment the variable Vari's rifle was sheathed, the radiation vibration sword was unsheathed. The sword flashed, and the two rogue that were approaching Lancelot quickly turned into wreckage and exploded under the blazing flames. Lancelot raised his sword and charged at the rogue and the black mech with the momentum of one man holding back 10,000 men. Chapter 56. Lancelot's radiation vibrasword effortlessly cut open the bodies of the abyssal bodies among the rogues and cut them into 8 pieces. Immediately after, Lancelot quickly retreated and avoided the chain swords coming from the left and right. Something's not right. They're too weak. They're even weaker than the previous ones. White Cat State 0 said solemnly. Even though the defensive capabilities of the abyssal body caused Portman, who was charging behind Lancelot, to expend quite a bit of effort, it was still somewhat out of his expectations. It's probably because they're still rational. Up until now, the abyssal bodies that could cooperate with ordinary rogues had surprised Ray Minkai a little. If it were the abyssal bodies that appeared in the battle with Naridali and Sean, these rogues would have been torn apart by the abyssal bodies that had lost all rationality and viewed all living things as enemies. Yeah, maybe it's the root cause of the outbreak in our hometown. The destruction of our hometown was definitely caused by humans. White Cat State 0's face became more and more ferocious as it spoke. Bang! When Lancelot raised his energy beam shield to block the attacks of the rogue, the newly installed hook claws on his waist popped out alternately, scattering the two rogue fighters who were trying to bully Lancelot by relying on their superior numbers and rashly charging in front of him. At this moment, gunshots came from behind Lancelot. It was Portman's troops. After spending a lot of effort, they finally killed all their targets. Now, they were here to support Lancelot according to the attack plan. With Portman's support, the pressure on Lancelot was greatly reduced. Even though Portman was having a hard time dealing with the abyssal demons, Lei Minkai no longer cared about those rascals who stopped him from hunting the abyssal demons after Lancelot. The main combat force was released. Instead, he handed them over to Portman's troops. Charge! Swing the sword. In the rain of bullets formed by Portman's support shooting, Lancelot turned into a white ghost. As he moved back and forth, he set off waves of killing in the streets between the buildings. Rumble! Thunderous roars came from the horizon once again. It was a bomber fleet. Nearly an hour after the iron wings of the first batch of bombers disappeared into the sky, the second batch of bombers arrived and spread their iron wings that symbolized destruction. While Lancelot led Portman's troops to form a frontal attack on the battlefield, Avalon, which had been waiting for a long time, moved again to provide cover for the second batch of bombers. Everyone attack. Although it was a feint, our mission was to cover Avalon's flanks. You must remember this. Valkyrie. Beretta sat in the cockpit of her new body. She withdrew her gaze from Avalon and ordered sternly, "Yes, my lord." The carriers that had been hovering in the air for a long time rushed to the beach northwest of Fukuoka City under the cover of the naval battleship's artillery fire. The clue was dropped. Under the leadership of the Valkyrie, the Sunderland fighters swept through the defenseless beach like a storm. They took a big detour and began to attack the strongholds that might pose a threat to Avalon's flanks. Britannia's attack was so smooth and powerful. Whether it was Portman led by Lancelot, the bomber fleet that was about to launch a second bombing strike on Fukuoka City under the cover of Avalon, or even the Sunderland forces led by the Valkyrie that were only feigning on the flanks, all of them made Sasaki Atsushi, who initially had confidence in victory, waver a little, especially when he saw the rebel army's trump card, the abyssal form, unable to resist Lancelot's 2 radiation vibraswords. Sasaki Atsushi clenched his fists tightly and did not loosen them for a long time. "Sir, Dr. Zasali seems to have completed the operation." Suddenly, a follower barged into the command center. "What?" Sasaki Atsushi was stunned and quickly looked back at the time. He found that only an hour had passed since the operation began. So fast. Sasaki Atsushi was surprised and happy. He looked at Lancelot on the screen and gritted his teeth, turned around, and left the command center. Even if he continued to watch the battle, it would not change in a short period of time. The only opportunity that could change the situation might appear in Zasali's operation room. Amidst the anxious footsteps, Sasaki Atsushi brought his follower to Zasali's operation room. As soon as he arrived, Sasaki Atsushi saw Zasali leaning against the wall, smoking silently. Seeing Zasali's relieved expression, Sasaki Atsushi's eyes lit up. He quickly asked, "Dr. Zasali, the operation is done?" Zasali heard the question and turned around. He flicked the ash from a cigarette and said, "I didn't disappoint. It's finally done. Sir Sasaki, if you want to use it now, I suggest you wait for 10 minutes. After the pivotal Suzaku's condition stabilizes, you can attack." 10 minutes. Although a little surprised, Sasaki Atsushi still nodded. According to the current situation, they could still hold on for 10 minutes. As long as the pivotal Suzaku was as strong as Zasali said, let alone 10 minutes, Sasaki Atsushi was willing to give it his all. "All right, Sir Sasaki, you can go back first. The battle is intense, and as the commander, it's not suitable for you to leave the command center for too long. When the pivotal Suzaku is ready to attack, I will let someone. That Nakamura something, I will let him inform you. In the end, your names are really hard to remember." Zasali took a deep breath and finished the rest of his cigarette. He puffed out the smoke, threw it into the trash can, and walked back to the operation room. When the door of the operation room closed, Sasaki Atsushi let out a long sigh. "Pass down the order. First and Second Reserve Team, attack. Ignore the Brittany Second Army for now. We have to pay attention to the KMF unit led by Lancelot, as well as the airstrike." After adjusting the battle order, Sasaki Atsushi pondered for a moment and gave another order. "Let the 3rd Air Defense Team prepare to attack. As long as the Britannia Empire's bombers enter the range, immediately fire the anti-aircraft missiles. As for the new floating airship, ignore it for now." "Yes, sir." The adjustment of the battle order was not to turn defeat into victory, but to delay until the pivotal Suzaku could attack. The enemy's movements have changed. Sasaki Atsushi's adjustment of the battle plan made Rei Minkai, who had been fighting at the front line, feel the change. It seems like they are stalling for time. State Zero, the White Cat, also felt the change. The number of enemies blocking the street in front had increased. Looking at the speed of the increase, it seemed that they no longer cared about formation and terrain. Instead, they were determined to nail Lancelot and the Portman unit behind him to the ground. Unfortunately, although the Portman unit was not under much pressure, there were still some losses, especially in terms of ammunition. More than 40% of the Portman units behind Lancelot had used up their ammunition. They had no choice but to turn back and head to the nearest beachhead to resupply. There was nothing they could do about it. After all, Portman was not Lancelot, who wielded a laser-vibrating sword and went on a killing spree. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, in the depths of Fukuoka City, balls of fire rose without warning. It's an anti-aircraft missile. Avalon. Ray Minkai saw and knew that the rebels had used anti-aircraft missiles. However, the target of these anti-aircraft missiles was not Avalon, but the black cloud iron wing hovering above Avalon. They're indeed stalling for time. Looking at the continuous explosions in the sky, Lei Minkai was also certain of his guess. Kai, what should we do? The enemy is probably brewing a conspiracy to release Asmodai. No, maybe there's a conspiracy even more terrifying than Asmodai. White Cat State Zero's gaze passed through the many abyssal bodies and fell on a certain direction in Fukuoka City. Prepare to attack. Ray Minkai said firmly after glancing at the little remaining energy. However, just as Lancelot was about to abandon the Portman unit and launch an attack alone, a dark red particle torrent suddenly lit up in the sky. Crackle. The air was vibrating, and the particles were roaring. The dazzling torrent of dark red particles instantly cleared away all the enemies in front of Lancelot, leaving only the steaming, faintly glowing molten street. "Okay, sorry to keep you waiting. The energy supply will be here soon. Please receive it." Cephal's voice came from the communication channel. Then, the wind blew again. It was the airdrop pod. Looking at the airdrop pod that was deeply embedded in the water, Ray Minkai smiled. Just in time. "Okay, can you annihilate the enemy's latest air defense force?" After Ray Minkai replaced Lancelot's energy package, Euphemia's head appeared on the screen. Air defense position. Ray Minkai glanced at the tactical map and found that the newly updated tactical map showed that the latest air defense position was actually next to the enemy's headquarters. Understood. Execute it now. Lancelot, who had received the energy supply, went all out. With the support of the Portman unit and Avalon, they quickly broke through the enemy's defense line and rushed into the air defense position. His sword fell. The trigger was pulled. The missile launchers and anti-aircraft guns were turned into nothingness in a few explosions. At this point, there were no more air defense forces in the sky above Fukuoka City. However, the moment the bomber group flew over Fukuoka City, a dazzling beam of light suddenly erupted from the ground, like a sword that appeared out of nowhere and split the sky. Boom! Boom! In the blink of an eye, more than half of the second batch of bombers were lost. That is. The screen in front of Ray Minkai was quickly zooming in until the camera locked onto the black shadow that was about 20 meters tall, standing in the city center. "Welcome to my latest masterpiece, The Liberator." Sisali lit his cigarette again and said slowly. Chapter 57. Liberator? Everyone in the command center sucked in a breath of cold air. Everyone was shocked by the attack of the 20-meter-tall shadow. It was just a simple strike, but nearly half of the second batch of bombers had been destroyed. At first glance, this batch of bombers was definitely no less than 100. Half of such a huge fleet had been cut down so easily. Since Lancelot's forceful landing, Atsushi Sawasaki, who had a tense expression, took a deep breath, raised his fist, and slammed it on the table. Good. Dr. Chisali, you didn't lie to me." Chisali, who was leisurely smoking, looked at the shadow he called Liberator with a deep gaze and smiled faintly. "I've never lied to you. Power is relative. How much you give is how much power you gain." As Chisali spoke, he also looked at the young follower blocking the door. Just now, before the Liberator attacked, the young follower inadvertently saw the clues in the operation room and reported it to Atsushi Sawasaki. As a result, Chisali and the young follower calmly faced Atsushi Sawasaki's accusation until the Liberator shocked everyone. "Ahem. Dr. Chisali, I've wronged you. Since it's necessary material, then we'll forget about the 20 rogues." Atsushi Sawasaki coughed and signaled to his young follower. "The results are out. Then, I still have things to deal with. I'll take my leave first." Chisali didn't care about the previous unpleasantness. He only said a few words and left the command center with the beautiful nurse, Phyllis. The two walked for a distance in the corridor. After confirming that no one was following them, Phyllis spoke. Doctor, can we retreat now? Chisali threw away the cigarette, and shook his head. Let's wait. I feel that what I want to know is about to happen. You'd better find a place to summon your rose sword. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape in time. Phyllis moved her lips. There was a hint of disdain in her eyes. Chisali shrugged in response. Boom! A slight tremor was transmitted along the surface. The commotion was caused by the liberators. From the looks of it, they had already started fighting with the enemy. At this moment, in the city center, the black figure with a thick right hand and a huge energy cannon was locked in a fierce battle with Lancelot. From afar, there was a huge disparity between the nearly 20-meter-tall black figure and the 5-meter-tall Lancelot. If it weren't for the surrounding buildings as cover, Lancelot would have been at a disadvantage in the first exchange. Asmodai? No, not Asmodai. It was a completely new enemy. Kai, this guy has never appeared in our home world. Be careful. White Cat State Zero's fur stood up again, its eyes filled with a frightening cold light. That's right. Whether it was the White Cat State Zero or the memories that appeared in Rei Minkai's mind from time to time, there was no memory of the black figure in front of them. Needless to say, the two of them did not know that the name of the black figure in front of them was the Liberators. Lancelot rushed into the shadow of the building on the right side of the Liberators and tried to use the building as cover to move to the other side. But in that instant, a small sun rose up. Buzz! The air was trembling. The building was wailing. The sun-like light beam instantly melted through the building where Lancelot was hiding. Boom! The building that was broken in half collapsed with a loud bang, sending up billowing smoke and dust. Suddenly, two flying shadows broke through the smoke and dust, swept past the Liberators' left and right like lightning, and plunged into the huge billboard behind the Liberators. Bang! The moment the sound of the steel cable exploded, the huge billboard suddenly pressed down on the Liberators like Mount Tai. Under the billboard, there was nowhere to escape. However, the moment the huge billboard was about to hit the Liberators, two small bumps suddenly appeared on the back of the Liberators. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two rays of light suddenly appeared from the small bumps, and the billboard was cut into pieces. That's a mechanical arm. It's the same as Asmodai's mechanical arm. As soon as the White Cat saw the mechanical arm that was waving the beam sword, it roared. Sure enough, they're on the same side. Kai, I see it. Without the White Cat saying it, Rei Minkai also saw it. The familiar posture, the familiar way of using it, without exception, revealed the aura of I am Asmodai's ally. In the smoke and dust, Lancelot accelerated forward, jumped to the building on the left side in one breath, and then took the opportunity to explode with an even faster speed, launching an attack on the Liberators like a cannonball. The sword flashed. Clang! The sound of gold and iron colliding exploded. The smoke and dust in the sky were all shaken away. Lancelot's radiation vibroblade was actually blocked by the Liberator's left arm. Then the wind whistled. The hook on Lancelot's waist turned back, and the hook shot out, plunging into the building not far behind, and pulled Lancelot in the nick of time, saving him from the fatal arc of light. This is really tricky. Rei Minkai looked at the mechanical arm that was slowly retracting and said with a solemn expression, although the Liberators in front of him were much smaller than Asmodai, its flexibility was better than the latter. Moreover, boom, Rei Minkai's hair stood on end. Just a moment ago, the Liberators that was still in the same place suddenly disappeared. If not for the White Cat's warning, Lancelot would have been cut in half by the beam sword in the Liberator's hand, just like the building he was standing on before. What a fast speed! With Lancelot's speed, he could only narrowly avoid the opponent's attack. It's coming! The White Cat screamed. Lancelot lowered his body, raised his hand, and shot the hook on his right arm into the building 30 meters away from the right, pulled hard, and dodged the Liberator's horizontal slash again. This is troublesome. State Zero. Yes, this is troublesome. The White Cat opened its mouth, and its face became gloomy. Regardless of size, attack power, or speed, the Liberators seemed to be able to suppress Lancelot. For a moment, Ray Minkai could only rely on the surrounding buildings to launch a guerrilla attack, looking for an opportunity to launch a fatal attack. However, the Liberator's nearly 360 degrees attack angle gave Ray Minkai a headache. Even with the help of the surrounding buildings, even if there was a slight chance, it would still be declared a failure under the Liberator's quick reaction. Da-da-da-da. Suddenly, on the other side of the city center, a series of gunshots rang out. At the same time, it was accompanied by the sound of cannons. Is that Portman? Have they completed their resupply? Under Ray Minkai's gaze, Portman, who had completed his resupply, and Sunderland, who had completed their beach landing, moved along the streets in a formation that took turns to cover the enemy as they gradually advanced. The series of gunshots and cannons just now came from them. Boom! Bullets whistled. Grenades roared. Portman and Sunderland, who had arrived in time, did not need Ray Minkai's further explanation of the situation. Under the command of the veterans who had participated in the battle at Narita Lianshan, they launched their attacks in an orderly manner. However, their attacks did not cause much damage to the Liberators. As the cannons exploded on the Liberator's body, the huge cannon in the Liberator's right hand was slowly raised again. Retreat. Ray Minkai had just finished speaking when the deadly beam of light that had destroyed half of the bombers rose again, mercilessly sweeping through the buildings where Portman and Sunderland were hiding. In an instant, Portman and Sunderland, who were within the range of the beam of light, were all turned into ashes. Only the remnants of Sunderland, who were at the periphery of the beam of light, were lucky enough to escape this disaster. No, devil, devil. In this hell-like scene, the black figure of the Liberator who slowly put down the terrifying beam cannon in his hand was deeply engraved in the eyes of the surviving pilots of Sanderlang's forces. The fear was also engraved in their hearts. Don't retreat. If we retreat here, then tomorrow, this monster will kill our loved ones and friends. For our loved ones, we must kill this monster here. Soldiers of the Britannia Empire, as long as you are still fighting, I, the third princess of the Britannia Empire, Deputy Governor of Area 11, Euphemia Li Britannia, will fight with you until the end. Just as the pilots who were defeated by the Liberators subconsciously turned around and retreated, Euphemia's voice suddenly rang in all the combat channels. Immediately after, a dark red beam of light rose in the sky, whistling through the void, and hit the Liberators directly. Boom! Violent particle energy was instantly released, engulfing the Liberators in a violent explosion, and in the blink of an eye, it was completely submerged in the fireball. Did it succeed? Ray Minkai had just raised this question in his heart when he immediately realized that something was wrong. He quickly opened the communication link with Avalon and shouted, "Avalon, retreat quickly." That abyssal body did not suffer any serious damage. As soon as Ray Minkai's voice fell, several purple beams suddenly tore through the fireball that engulfed the Liberators and broke through the air toward Avalon, which was coming from afar. Boom! The surface of Avalon lit up with the unique glow of the energy light shield. Although the first purple beam was blocked by Avalon's energy light shield, the Liberators released more than one purple beam. Boom! Boom! 3 consecutive purple beams bombarded Avalon's energy light shield, causing damage, and in the blink of an eye, the energy light shield's output was depleted. Avalon was in a precarious situation. At this moment, Lancelot sprinted at full speed, threw away the radiation vibrasword in his right hand, picked up the variable Vari's rifle hanging from his waist, and aimed at the Liberator's head, firing continuously with maximum output mode. Bang! Bang! In the screeching sound of the impact bomb, Lancelot, who was bursting with all his strength, quickly rushed to the front of the Liberators, trying to rely on the cover of the impact bomb to swing his sword and look at the joint of the Liberator's right foot. No matter how stiff the armor of the Liberators was, its joint was definitely a weak point. But in the next second, a black shadow suddenly appeared and blocked Lancelot's attack. What? It's the mechanical arm again. Although Lancelot borrowed the force to quickly retreat, his attack was interrupted. He could only watch as the Liberators opened its chest, revealing a deep cannon muzzle. Zap! The terrifying electric light almost reached a full state from 0 in the blink of an eye. Boom! A fiery red beam of light exploded. In Rei Minkai's desperate eyes, this beam of light crossed the void and swept violently at Avalon, which was urgently retreating. The beam of light disappeared. More than half of the left side of Avalon's hull was melted. Boom! In the explosion, Avalon dragged billowing smoke and fell weakly to the other side of Fukuoka City. It's like this again. The powerless and desperate Rei Minkai looked at the rapidly falling Avalon and said in a daze. A familiar but extremely painful memory appeared in his mind once again. Once upon a time, Rei Minkai, was also a knight who swore an oath to the princess to protect her for life. However, in this familiar scene in front of him, he lost the princess. Yes, whether it was in memory or reality, he lost the princess. The princess that he must protect. No! In the painful howl, Rei Minkai's eyes turned red. Lancelot's movements suddenly changed and became extremely crazy. You and I are one. Kai, since you are crazy, then I will be crazy. White Cat State Zero's deep blue pupils were drowned in a crazy blood-red color, and the calm voice also became crazy. Come on, Kai. If it's you now, you should be able to call me. Our names. Come on, Kai. For your princess, offer your crazy revenge. Kai. In the increasingly crazy cries of White Cat State Zero, Rei Minkai opened his mouth and roared. Long Fawn Lion, Skonita. Roar. On the other side of the earth, a monstrous pillar of fire rose into the sky. This is... Skonita and Cornelia uncontrollably stood up from their seats and looked out the window in a certain direction. That was where the huge lion's stone sculpture was. The lion has finally awakened. Looking at the pillar of fire, Mimi's figure also disappeared. Chapter 58. The towering pillar of fire broke through the sky, drawing an arc in the void outside the atmosphere. After crossing the Pacific Ocean, it fell straight down, tearing apart the atmosphere like a sharp sword from the heavens, shrouding Lancelot, who was standing in the ruins. Boom! 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 The fall of the pillar of fire did not trigger any explosion. Instead, it triggered a series of loud noises like a heartbeat. The wind also whistled along with the loud noises at this moment. That is, on the west side of Fukuoka City, Veretta, who led her subordinates in a faint battle, looked at the pillar of fire falling from the sky in shock. But Veretta, who had just witnessed Avalon fall 2 kilometers in front of their faint army, did not dare to continue to be entangled in this sudden pillar of fire for a second longer. Now, what she must do was to rush to the site of Avalon's fall as soon as possible to rescue. Otherwise, even if this battle was finally won, the 11th District Army, who lost the 3rd Princess Euphemia Libertania, would be humiliated as a loser. Everyone, speed up. Get to the site of Avalon's fall as soon as possible. In the wind, Veretta's faint army accelerated forward. On the other side, Ciceri fiercely put out the cigarette in his hand, and his eyes were full of fanaticism. Yes, that's it. This should be the thing that the princess is looking for. His speculation was not wrong. When he saw the rapidly evolving figure in the pillar of fire, Ciceri knew that his decision had finally been verified. Doctor, it's time to retreat. But at this moment, the glamorous nurse poured cold water on Ciceri. Ciceri frowned, shook his head, and did not speak. But from his expression, it seemed that he did not want to evacuate this world so quickly. The glamorous nurse moved her lips, but in the end, she did not insist. She secretly adjusted her rose sword to the best attacking state through remote control. Roar! In the pillar of fire, a huge roar sounded. Then, a figure emerged from the pillar of fire, from small to large, from shallow to deep. Crack! A sharp claw tore through the flames and stepped into the ruins full of building debris. Crack! As the pair of sharp claws advanced, a steel beast broke through the pillar of fire. In the burning air, in the burning ruins, it appeared in front of the Liberator. The steel beast was covered in flame-like orange-yellow armor. On its gigantic head, there were 5 sharp swords on the top, left, and right sides of its head. On its waist, there were 2 swords that were even larger and sharper than the former. There was a plasma thruster at the top of each of its 4 limbs, providing it with a powerful propulsive force. This steel beast was able to maintain its unparalleled attack power and speed. What's more, in addition to the plasma thrusters, the Zenata was also equipped with 5 E-grade protective shields, providing it with excellent defense. Roar! Amidst the fading pillars of fire, the steel beast that had completely revealed its body stepped on the ruins and let out a roar full of anger. Zila! The enemy would not sit still and wait for death, nor would they open their mouths to talk nonsense. Instead, he directly raised his hand and shot out a blazing beam of light. Shwa! The dilapidated building melted once again. However, it did not cause any damage to the steel beast. In the flickering light of this blazing beam of light, Mecha, who was sitting in the steel beast's cockpit, had red eyes, and 3 dazzling spots gradually appeared on his ferocious face. Zenata, Zenata, this is your name. It's also your strength. Kill it. Mecha's voice was low and crazy, repeating the same words over and over again. Roar. The white cat. No, it should be the long-toothed lion now. Zenata did not answer Mecha's words. It only responded with a roar full of anger. Ta-ta-ta. The heavy, sharp claws continued to step on the broken ruins and the scorched earth that was covered in sparks. It drove the burning steel body covered in a layer of flames to accelerate towards the Liberator who had raised the energy beam cannon in his hand again. Countless electric sparks once again gathered at the muzzle of the beam cannon in the Liberator's hand. In the blink of an eye, this fatal beam cannon once again reached the energy threshold to be able to fire. Wong! The fierce beam of light once again broke through the air and attacked. This time, this fatal beam of light was actually shot out in illumination mode. Even if the long-toothed lion Zenata was able to avoid the beam's shooting axis in the first moment, the Liberator only needed to move its arm, and the beam that was able to melt everything would follow behind the long-toothed lion Zenata like a shadow. It was as if the long-toothed lion Zenata would be melted in the next moment. Roar! The long-toothed lion Zenata roared again. The plasma thrusters installed at the top of its 4 limbs simultaneously exerted force, instantly raising the long-toothed lion Zenata's speed to a new level. The speed was so fast that the long-toothed lion Zenata actually pulled out an afterimage. Like an arrow leaving the bow, in the blink of an eye, it left the beam shot by the Liberator far behind. Even if several buildings appeared in front of its eyes, the long-toothed lion Zenata was still fearless. It only lowered its huge head, and the 5 sharp swords at the top of its head on the left and right sides of its huge head turned and pointed the blades forward. Like a sharp sword being unsheathed, it pierced through the buildings, blocking its path in one breath, and rushed in front of the Liberator. Clang! It hit. However, the long-toothed lion Zenata's sharp sword light was blocked by the Liberator's huge energy beam cannon. At this moment, the wrestling between the two also erupted. The Liberator gripped the energy beam cannon's barrel tightly and pushed it forward with force. The long-toothed lion Zenata, on the other hand, exploded with the power of the plasma thrusters at full force and gradually forced the Liberator to retreat. Ka, ka, ka. The sound of cracking could be heard in this silent wrestling. Clang! In the next second, the energy beam cannon's barrel in the Liberator's hand actually shattered. The energy beam cannon that had wiped out many of Portman's and Sunderland's reinforcements, and even shot down Avalon's energy beam cannon, shattered under the impact of the long-toothed lion Zenata's sharp attack. The Liberator, no, inside the Liberator, the young man who was entangled by countless wires, the pivotal vermilion bird, was shocked. It subconsciously raised its right hand and pushed hard, and the moment it threw away the energy beam cannon's barrel, it raised its left hand, ejected the wrist cannon hidden on its left forearm, and shot wildly at the long-toothed lion Zanata and the energy beam cannon. Da-da-da-da, sizzle, boom! Under the shooting of the wrist cannon, the energy beam cannon's internal energy system, which was out of balance, suddenly exploded, swallowing the space within a radius of tens of meters. However, the long-toothed lion Zanata, who should have been involved in the explosion, appeared on the other side, stepping on the wreckage of the building, and let out a provocative roar at the Liberator. This time, the Liberator was serious. It, and its other half, the pivotal vermilion bird, finally felt the threat of the long-toothed lion Zanata. The steel beast in front of it could indeed kill the Liberator. The flames that burned the earth suddenly swayed, and the long-toothed lion Zanata once again erupted with its fastest speed, once again charging straight at the Liberator. Buzz! The mechanical arm spread out again. The Liberator did not dodge. Instead, it spread out all the mechanical arms it had, fighting with fighting. As the core of the Liberator, the pivotal vermilion bird could also see it. Although the long-toothed lion Zanata had extremely fast speed, it mainly focused on fighting. With the help of many mechanical arms, the Liberator was not afraid of the long-toothed lion Zanata in terms of fighting. Buzz! Two beam swords shot out, slashing at the long-toothed lion Zanata's head in a pincer attack, as if it was going to kill the long-toothed lion Zanata. However, the long-toothed lion Zanata's body swayed, and it actually dodged the Liberator's slash, circling to the other side. At the same time, the sword on the right side of the long-toothed lion Zanata's waist was raised high, and then it quickly flattened, slashing straight at the left mechanical arm of the Liberator. Bang! The sound of metal colliding exploded. A black shadow flew up and landed on the ground. One of the Liberator's mechanical arms was cut off. The long-toothed lion Zanata, who used its tail to offset the powerful inertia brought about by its high speed, did not dare to stop at all, and once again ran among the many broken buildings. This was because in the next moment, a stream of black and red particles erupted from the Liberator's chest, biting tightly behind the long-fanged lion Shunita's back, destroying all the buildings that blocked the shooting axis. However, the result was still that the long-toothed lion Zanata relied on its excellent high-speed performance and the cover of many buildings to dodge the Liberator's shot again. Boom! 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 The city center that had fallen into the abyss of fire finally reached the end of its fate, and several violent explosions occurred continuously. The thick smoke and explosions enveloped the Liberator and the long-toothed lion Zanata in the blink of an eye, isolating them from each other's sight. Whoosh! The wind surged, and a cold light erupted from the depths of the smoke and dust, heading straight for the Liberator's back. The Liberator and its core pivot, the vermilion bird, seemed to be unaware of this. Just as the sharp cold light was about to pierce the Liberator's back, a cold aura suddenly rose from afar. In the blink of an eye, it rushed to the front of the cold light and collided with it. Boom! The shock wave formed by the collision dispersed the smoke and dust that enveloped the Liberator and the long-toothed lion Zanata. It floated and dissipated in the sea of fire, revealing the Liberator and the long-toothed lion Zanata, who were standing opposite each other 30 meters apart. The long-toothed lion Zanata tilted its head slightly and looked in the direction of the cold light. After realizing that the cold, killing intent did not appear again, it launched an attack on the Liberator again. At this moment, the two sides that had fallen into a fierce battle again did not know that another battle had begun because of their battle. Chapter 59. In the sky, shadows called winged fire 3 were circling back and forth. Above them, there was a steel giant known as the Void Walker, looking down at everything below. On the ground, a beautiful body painted in a rose color with beautiful lines and a rose emblem on its right shoulder, looked up warily at the Void Walker that was looking down at it. Inside the spacious cockpit with a diameter of 2 meters, Phyllis, who had taken off her nurse uniform and changed into a tight black leather jacket, looked at the winged fire 3 and the Void Walker in the sky with a solemn expression. "Doctor, prepare to retreat." Cicely also knew the seriousness of the beautiful nurse. If it weren't for the fact that he was unwilling to see his masterpiece Liberator lose to the steel behemoth and couldn't help but ask Phyllis to attack, the other party probably wouldn't have discovered their existence. However, the other party's speed was too fast. Could it be that they directly used space transmission technology? Otherwise, how could he have arranged so many drones above them the moment he discovered them? Cicely looked up at the spherical display above his head. Suddenly, Cicely seemed to see a speck of light above the 9 heavens. That's the S.P.F. Authority's special warship? Cicely exclaimed, then sighed. I miscalculated. Since the noble princess has descended to this world, as her flagship, it naturally has to follow her into this world. Cicely sighed and looked at Phyllis next to him apologetically. Phyllis, sorry, I was greedy. No, doctor, hold tight. Now, I have to use all my strength. Phyllis shook his head. Then he completely unfolded his biochemical body and connected it to the interface that extended from the bottom of the cockpit. At this time, the beautiful nurse was no longer beautiful. She had turned into a cold and ferocious biochemical monster. But even so, Cicely, who was standing next to Phyllis, did not move. Instead, he calmly fixed himself on the seat that rose up later. Oh, are you going to start a fight? In the sky, a familiar voice came. Phyllis and Cicely both knew that this was the voice of the princess, Himimi. Phyllis, hold on tight. Doctor. Phyllis did not speak, but her voice echoed in the cockpit. At this moment, the beautiful nurse, who had revealed her true face, had merged with her exclusive mech, the Rose Sword. The Rosette Sword's electronic eyes suddenly lit up, and the equipment on its shoulders, chest, legs, and waist all opened up, spewing out thick smoke. In the blink of an eye, the Rose Sword disappeared into the layers of smoke. You want to run? No way. Mimi sneered. The wing flame 3s that were hovering in the air suddenly changed directions. They all accelerated and rushed into the thickening smoke. However, from the feedback from the sensors on Winged Fire 3, it seemed that they did not encounter any enemies. Under Mimi's puzzled gaze, the Winged Flame 3, which was able to shuttle back and forth through the thick smoke no less than 10 times, once again broke through the smoke and flew into the air. Camouflage? You underestimate me. Mimi's mouth curled up slightly, and after a sneer, the Void Walker, which had turned into a humanoid equipment, opened the equipment backpack on its back. Following a series of mechanical clicks, 2 cylindrical pieces of equipment appeared on the Void Walker's shoulders. In fact, these 2 cylindrical equipment were a set of loudspeakers. Coward, listen to my song. The next second, Mimi's voice sounded. Where? Poor and cute coward. Hide. Coward is hiding. In this almost childish song, the 2 loudspeakers on the Void Walker's shoulders also emitted waves of invisible waves, which surged in all directions along with the rise and fall of the song, until it collided with an invisible object. Found it. What a pitiful and adorable coward caught. Mimi's eyes burst out a golden light, and the wing flame 3 hovering in the air turned their noses in unison, pointing in the direction locked on by the loudspeakers. Buzz! Dozens of lasers suddenly burst out. In the blink of an eye, the invisible Rose Sword was pulled out. TSK, we were found so quickly. Phyllis secretly scolded. Cough, cough. Phyllis, pay attention to the lady. Lady. The corner of Cicely's eyes twitched a few times, and he opened his mouth to remind. Shut up. You're such a curious doctor. If it weren't for you, would I have fallen to the point where I was forced to run by a little girl? It seemed that because of the fusion with the vehicle, the beautiful nurse, who was like an ice goddess in the past, had become quite hot-tempered. Solly glanced at the sky, full of Wing Flame 3, and remained silent. The Wing Flame 3's attack was still ongoing. Even if their attacks were blocked by the Rose Sword's energy shield, the Wing Flame 3's still faithfully carried out their mission. "Shut up. It's so unpleasant to hear." Phyllis, who was getting more and more angry, shouted loudly. The Rose Sword fully opened its energy shield, continuously pushing it to the limit until it exceeded the limit. Beep, beep, beep. The urgent alarm frantically reverberated in the cockpit of the Rose Sword, but Phyllis did not have any abnormalities. She had already become a cold, killing machine. Under the siege of so many Wing Flame 3s, the energy shield, which had exceeded the limit of the output and fallen into an extremely unstable state, finally collapsed. But the moment before it collapsed, Phyllis saw the opportunity and reluctantly gathered part of the energy shield's energy in one direction. And then she let go of control. Boom! The incomparably violent energy instantly destroyed the Wing Flame 3s hovering in front of the Rose Sword, opening a path to rush in front of Voidwalker. Buzz! The Rose Sword's thrusters were fully powered, and in the blink of an eye, the Rose Sword was lifted from the ground and rushed in front of Voidwalker. "Shut up!" Phyllis's murderous voice sounded, and the Rose Sword waved the beam sword from its wrist and slashed at Voidwalker. However, the menacing slash was easily blocked by Voidwalker's left arm and gathered the needlepoint defense on it. "Is this the legendary Rose Sword? Let me have a good taste of it." Himimi's voice was full of fighting spirit, as if she could not wait to fight 300 rounds with the enemy in front of her. But Phyllis's heart could not help but sink. She knew her own situation. She had previously stated that her Rose Sword could not compete with Himimi's Fire Phoenix. But now, Phyllis was shocked to find that even Voidwalker in front of her seemed to be unable to resist the Rose Sword, let alone the legendary Fire Phoenix. Suddenly, Phyllis made a decision. The Rose Sword retracted its beam sword and changed from a slash to a fist, smashing fiercely at Voidwalker's left arm, as if to break the needlepoint defense system on Voidwalker's arm in one fell swoop. But Voidwalker caught the Rose Sword's right fist with a backhand. Voidwalker raised his right arm to block Rosette Sword's left hook, which she had seized the opportunity to throw at him. Immediately afterward, the Rose Sword did not break free from Voidwalker's right fist. Instead, she leaned forward and caught Voidwalker's arms in one fell swoop. Then, the Rosette Sword's armor lit up, and an ominous aura arose from the light patterns that flowed all over its body. "This is self-destruction. Lunatic." Himimi was shocked. "It's too late. Your Highness." Phyllis's triumphant laughter rang out. The light patterns that wandered all over the Rose Sword's body bloomed with an incomparably dazzling light. In the blink of an eye, the Rose Sword and Voidwalker were swallowed up. Boom! A violent explosion. A huge fireball. At this moment, it tore the sky apart. But in the next moment, the Wing Flame 3 that surged from all directions jointly opened a lampshade-shaped force field, and the huge explosion caused by the Rose Sword's self-destruction was tightly compressed inside the force field. Outside this force field, countless fluorescent lights emerged from the void and quickly gathered into the outline of Voidwalker. The fluorescent lights faded, and the unscathed Voidwalker reappeared in the sky. "Demonis, did you detect anything?" Himimi seemed to be a little angry. "Yes, subtle space-time fluctuations were detected. It seems that the enemy has activated an emergency space-time escape device. The Demonis, which was in the synchronous orbit, sent a monitoring report. TSK, that's why I hate biohumans the most. Without saying a word, you abandoned your body and mech and ran away." Himimi angrily scolded before turning her gaze back to her original mission. "Demonis, pay attention to the surrounding space-time fluctuations and lock on to the lion. Our mission is about to be completed." Understood. The battle here was over. But the battle between the Liberator and the long-toothed lion, Shonita, was still ongoing. While Sisri and the other two were fighting Himimi, the Liberator and the long-toothed lion, Shonita, had fought several rounds. Both sides had wins and losses. The Liberator's mechanical arms were all chopped off by the lion Fong Nita, but the lion Fong Nita also paid the price of losing a large blade. Now, the battle was at its climax. Chapter 60. Pitch Black Giant, Steel Beast. Both of them had different degrees of injuries on their bodies. Between them, swords and broken arms were scattered all over the ground. Judging from their posture, this battle was destined to be a life-and-death outcome. Steel rumbled and exploded. The giant and the ferocious beast fought together again. He swung his sword and slashed horizontally. He jumped and dodged. Putting aside the huge body size of the two, as well as the rare metal used to forge their bodies, and the mysterious power, this battle was simply a battle between an ancient Homo sapiens and a long-toothed lion. Yes, after using up all their long-range weapons and combat weapons, the only way the two of them could kill each other was with their fists and sharp teeth. Roar! Even though all the blades were broken, the long-toothed lion still opened its huge mouth ferociously and used its sharp teeth to tear off a large piece of armor from the Liberator's right arm. Bang! An explosion sounded, and the Liberator's right arm was crippled. Roar! The long-toothed lion shook its head, and the armor that was torn apart fell to the other side. The long and narrow electronic eyes flashed with the light of a wild, killing intent. The Liberator's right arm was crippled. However, it still took a stance and flicked out the last beam sword on its left wrist, taking the lead to charge at the long-toothed lion. Whoosh! The beam sword drew a blazing arc and slashed down at the long-toothed lion. However, it was dodged by the long-toothed lion again. As the core of the Liberator, the pivot vermilion bird had a feeling from the beginning. The steel beast in front of it seemed to be more and more agile and sharp like a real beast. No matter how the pivot vermilion bird used its newly obtained strength to try to defeat the long-toothed lion, the long-toothed lion could always see through its flaws and dodge its attacks, or even take the opportunity to counterattack. It was as if the long-toothed lion had a pair of eyes that could see through the Liberator and even the plans of the pivot vermilion bird. No matter how they moved or planned, they would be perfectly resolved by the long-toothed lion. Monster! The pivot vermilion bird spoke for the first time since it became the core of the Liberator. However, no one heard it, not to mention Ray Minkai, who had lost his consciousness and completely liberated the wildness of the long-toothed lion. At this moment, Ray Minkai had no way of knowing any information from the outside world. Outside, it was a fight to the death. In Ray Minkai's consciousness, there was that eternal darkness. Ray Minkai didn't know what was wrong with him. He only knew that his heart was in so much pain that he wanted to tear apart everything that appeared in front of him, even if what he saw now was only eternal darkness. However, what he didn't know was that his desire to tear apart the things in front of him had caused the long-fanged lion, Nita, to become even crazier and more aggressive. Bang! Even though the long-fanged lion Shunita's blade was broken, it still had its claws and fangs. Every time it waved its sharp claws, it would leave a deep claw mark on the Liberator's body and take away a piece of meat from the Liberator's body. However, as the Liberator that Sisali had described as a masterpiece, it was not to be trifled with. Even when it was beaten black and blue by the long-fanged lion, it was still able to seize the opportunity to deal a heavy blow to the lion. Roar! The long-fanged lion Shunita let out a painful roar. The Liberator used its remaining left arm to grab the head of the long-fanged lion Shunita, and then brazenly slammed its head against it. Boom! The loud sound of metal colliding resounded throughout the sky above Fukuoka City like an explosion. The huge impact forced the Liberator and the long-fanged lion Shunita to retreat. As the dust flew, they barely managed to stabilize their bodies amidst the flames that covered the ground. Kacha, sizzle. A series of noises of mechanical malfunctions could be heard. Waves of electric sparks quickly spread from the inside to the outside of the Liberator and the long-fanged lion Shunada's bodies. However, waves of black liquid suddenly gushed out of the Liberator's body, quickly extinguishing the leaping electric sparks and covering the large and small wounds on the Liberator's body in one go. The Liberator's injuries were quickly healed by the black liquid. What a pestering monster! Looking at the Liberator's healed injuries, the long-fanged lion Shunada suddenly spoke. But it was fearless. Roar! The long-fanged lion Shunada, who was also riddled with wounds, let out a roar that far surpassed all the previous roars. It was even louder and more shocking. With this roar, a faintly visible wave of air quickly spread out in all directions with the long-fanged lion Shunada as the center. Under the impact of this wave of air, the surface of the broken swords and remains that were scattered everywhere actually emitted waves of dim light. The moment the dim light turned from dim to bright, it turned into streams of light and soared into the sky, swarming and drowning the long-fanged lion Shunada. At this moment, the Liberator's entire body was surging with a powerful healing black liquid. The long-fanged lion Shunada triggered the mysterious power that fused the broken swords and remains that were scattered everywhere together with it. No matter who it was, as long as they saw this scene, they could not help but think that this would be the final blow of this battle. Regardless of whether it was the Liberator or the long-fanged lion Shunada, they had both tried their best to kill each other in the previous battle. Bang! Amidst the howling wind, a sound that sounded like a heart beating suddenly sounded. As soon as the sound fell, the Liberator brazenly took the lead to attack. Buzz! Although it could not regenerate the lost mechanical arm, two dazzling lights had already lit up between the Liberator's wrists. It was the beam sword that had been repaired. In this short period of time, other than the terrifying particle beam cannon on the Liberator's chest, only the two beam swords on the Liberator's wrists could be used. Whoosh! As gravel flew everywhere, the beam sword in the Liberator's hand slashed down at the long-fanged lion Shunada. However, it did not hit the target. Boom! The white light that drowned the long-fanged lion Shunada suddenly erupted at this critical moment. The huge impact forced the Liberator back, causing it to retreat uncontrollably. It only stopped retreating after crashing into a dilapidated building. Crack! The Liberator was not surprised by the sudden explosion of white light, nor did it care about what was going on. Instead, it decisively put away the beam sword and opened the particle beam cannon on its chest. It aimed at the white light and fired the particle beam cannon. Boom! The moment the blazing particle torrent exploded, it completely melted and destroyed all the objects in the shooting axis. It was as if it was going to destroy the entire world. However, just as the terrifying particle torrent was about to hit the white light surrounding the long-fanged lion Shunada, a dazzling light suddenly erupted from the long-fanged lion Shunada's eyes. A terrifying aura soared into the sky. The particle torrent that the Liberator shot out actually stopped under the impact of this aura. It even showed signs of being forced back. Sizzle! The Liberator's chest surged, and the black liquid that had repaired it earlier appeared again. It surged at a speed visible to the naked eye toward the beam cannon that was shooting the particle torrent, injecting the energy it contained into the beam cannon. Buzz, 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 buzz. Under the influence of the energy injected by the black liquid, the beam cannon's roar became louder and more ear-piercing, but also more powerful. The originally stagnant footsteps began to move forward again, tearing the white light apart again. Crackle! In the area where the particle torrent and the white light collided, streaks of energy lightning that tore through the void twisted their bodies crazily, emitting waves of manic roars. Roar! In the white light, a roar sounded. A pure white figure suddenly charged out of the white light and fearlessly crashed into the particle torrent. What was strange was that when this pure white figure crashed into the particle torrent, there were no signs of an explosion. What was there was that the unparalleled particle torrent actually melted like snow. Under the impact of the pure white figure, it quickly retreated at an astonishing speed until the Liberator, who was caught off guard, was pierced through by the pure white figure. How can this be? My power! The core of the Liberator, which was also the pivotal tree vermilion bird, stared blankly at her chest, the part that had already turned into nothingness, and before she could even finish her words of disbelief, she fell into endless darkness. Boom! The Liberator, which was praised as the greatest masterpiece by Dr. Zasali, had reached its end. Under the huge mushroom cloud, in front of the blazing flames, the white light that killed the Liberator dissipated. The steel behemoth that was riddled with wounds, its armor tattered, and was barely able to fight was revealed. It raised its head that was penetrated by a huge crack and looked in the direction where Avalon had fallen with its remaining good right eye. Then it took a shaky step, one step at a time it walked over. Kai, you have to live. After an unknown amount of time, a light appeared in the eternal darkness. Ray Minkai also heard the voice that he had heard in his dream, as well as that beautiful, pure, and extremely familiar figure. White gauze dress, long, soft pink hair, a charming face, and the blood that dyed the white gauze dress red in the blink of an eye. Ray Minkai was shocked and was about to step forward, but he was stopped by the pink-haired girl. She stretched out her right hand that was dripping with blood and showed the object in her palm to Ray Minkai. Kai, take it away. As long as you are still alive, we will meet again. The moment the object fell into Ray Minkai's palm, in the eternal darkness, the pink-haired girl's figure suddenly shattered. When the flickering flame illuminated Ray Minkai's eyes, he was surprised to find that the object in his hand was actually a lion head medal inlaid with a pair of rubies as the pupils. You have finally... The weak voice attracted Ray Minkai's attention. UFFI, Your Highness. As soon as he saw the source of the voice, Ray Minkai was shocked by the girl who was covered in blood and lying in Cecil's arms. The girl smiled weakly and moved her hand, but she didn't succeed. Ray Minkai looked down and found that the mask in the girl's hand was the mask he had been wearing. Looking at Ray Minkai's surprised gaze, Euphemia revealed a proud smile. It's really you, my Lion Knight. A faint blush came over Euphemia's pale face. Ray Minkai, my Lion Knight. I finally see you again, my knight. Chapter 61. So cold. Euphemia reluctantly opened her eyes and looked around. Now she had no strength all over her body, and she was even ravaged by bone-piercing pain. This heart-wrenching pain made Euphemia have no strength or spirit to respond to Sahil, who was holding her in his arms and calling her in a panic. In Sahil's call, Euphemia's gradually unfocused gaze wandered from Sahil's face to the broken ceiling and then to the bridge engulfed in flames. Her gaze crossed the bridge and fell into the raging flames, as if she was staring at something. It seems. This sentence flashed through Euphemia's mind. It's really similar to that day. That day, it was already the summer of 2 years ago. At that time, Her Highness Euphemia Britannia, the third princess of the Britannia Empire, who was about to pass her 14th birthday, went to the royal manor on the outskirts of the imperial capital with the permission of His Majesty the Emperor to prepare for her upcoming birthday with a few good friends. However, no one would have thought that the princess and her party, who were supposed to be happily preparing for the birthday party in the royal manor that was guarded by many soldiers, would encounter a massacre. No one knew how this calamity happened. By the time the soldiers realized that the enemy was in front of them, it was already too late. Nearly 10 unknown KMFs, which came out of nowhere, set off a bloody massacre in the manor like a tornado. The moment the panicked princess and her party were brought out of the manor by the maids and guards and set foot on the road to the imperial capital, the enemies lying in ambush on both sides of the road immediately launched an attack. No one could escape this wave of attack. Even Her Highness Euphemia, the third princess, who was protected by many maids and guards who sacrificed themselves to protect her, was the same. The enemy seemed to have come to kill all the people in this royal manor, without any mercy, and without any additional actions. Even when they saw the third princess, Euphemia, standing behind the guards, the enemy just casually picked up the rocket launcher beside them and fired at the crowd. Boom! The roar of the guards. The explosion of the rocket hitting the target. At this moment became Euphemia's memory at this moment. She, lying on the edge of the burning carriage, he stared at the enemies that were gradually surrounding him, as well as the unknown KMF bodies that were chasing after him from the royal manor. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have implicated you. Euphemia didn't know why the enemy was here, but there was no doubt that they were here for the Britannia royal family. Regardless of whether it was the loyal maids and guards or Euphemia's friends who came to this royal manor with her, they were probably all implicated by him. In the raging flames, the masked enemies stepped over the pool of blood on the ground, passed through the flames, and came to Euphemia, looking at the third princess lying in a pool of blood. Click! The leader of the enemy took out a pistol and loaded it. Who are you? Facing the black muzzle, Euphemia suddenly had a trace of strength. However, the enemy did not answer her. Instead, he slowly pulled the trigger. Roar! Suddenly, just at the moment when the bullet was about to be fired, a roar suddenly sounded above the sky. Then, just as everyone was at a loss from the roar, the sky split open. A huge crack tore the sky apart under Euphemia's incredulous gaze. Moreover, in that crack, another roar came. That is, Euphemia, who was completely attracted by the crack in the sky, actually forgot the pain on her body, forgot that the muzzle was still pointed at her head, and focused on the slightest change in the crack. Da-da-da! Gunshots sounded. For some reason, the enemy suddenly raised their guns and fired at the crack in the sky. Even the unknown KMF body that had just arrived joined the attack formation. From their actions, it seemed that they were afraid of something. In the next second, a white light suddenly rushed out from the crack, directly facing the enemy's attack from the sky. Boom! At this moment, the earth trembled. Smoke and dust, roars at this moment. Everyone's hearing and sight were taken away. They only remembered the shock of the sky collapsing and the deafening roars. In the smoke and dust, a scream sounded. Then, at the same time, a broken metal armor broke through the smoke and dust, and with the sound of the wind, flew over the enemy's head and crashed into the chariot not far behind Euphemia that was burned to the point where only its skeleton was left before it deeply pierced into the ground. This is... Hey, what happened? Just as the enemy was trying to ask about the situation, a huge head appeared from the smoke and dust. The outline of that pure, white, and flawless head undoubtedly caused the enemy's subconscious to cry out in alarm. Lion, roar! The hunt began again. This time, the enemy that was hunting Euphemia became the prey. But when the pure white lion stood in front of Euphemia again, there was only Euphemia and the pure white lion left. No, there was only one person left. Euphemia used the last of her strength to raise her eyes and look at the pure white lion's head that suddenly opened. She looked at the strangely dressed young man who landed on the ground and walked in front of her. Take it with you. Maybe we will have a chance to meet again. This was Euphemia's memory of that day. 2 years later, it still appeared with flames. It was still that familiar pure white lion. It was still that familiar face. However, she did not realize that the lion knight she had been looking for 2 years was actually by her side. No matter how many thousands of words she wanted to say, they all turned into that sentence when the silver mask fell into her hands. My lion knight, my knight, you are finally here. Your Highness, wake up. When Cecil, who was holding Euphemia, heard Euphemia's last words, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Doctor, why isn't the doctor here yet? Veretta, who was standing at the side, also kept urging. Royd, who had already seen Euphemia's state, sighed and silently shook his head. However, he was shocked by the sudden arrival of the silent Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai took the dying Euphemia from Cecil's arms and held her tightly in his arms. He stood up and turned to walk toward the Valkyrie that was parked not far away. Veretta, Let me use the Valkyrie for a while. Wait. K. The deputy governor's condition cannot be on the Valkyrie. Otherwise, it will cause internal bleeding. Cecil hurriedly shouted. Otherwise, what can we do? Now, the deputy governor, UFFI, is about to die. Can we only wait for the doctor, who will come at any time? Ray Minkai roared in pain. When Euphemia's last words were lamenting, Ray Minkai also recalled the memories of that day. Although he did not know why he gave the lion head medal to Euphemia, he knew that Euphemia was undoubtedly the most important person to him. If you want to put on a sad show, it is too early. Euphemia is not dead yet. At least, she can't die yet. Just as Veretta was about to pass the Valkyrie to Ray Minkai, a figure suddenly descended from the sky and blocked Ray Minkai's path. You are? He Mimi. Ray Minkai was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. You have a way to save UFFI? The person who came was Mimi. She nodded, turned around, and trotted to a pile of rubble. After rummaging for a while, she picked up something and returned to Ray Minkai. Look, you heartless guy. This little guy tried so hard to help you, but in the end, you have the opposite sex instead of humanity. Poor little kitty. Himimi disdainfully rolled her eyes at Ray Minkai while stroking the white ball in her arms. State 0. As soon as Ray Minkai spoke, he found that the body of the white cat, State 0, seemed to be somewhat blurred. How can it be? How? Himimi angrily raised her right hand and pointed at Ray Minkai's nose. You guys are too ruthless. Can't you wait for me? Why do you have to do it yourself? Don't you know what kind of situation you are in? You still dare to risk everything to kill the enemy? In the end, not only the little guy, but even Euphemia was implicated by you guys. Implicated? Yes. We will talk about the specific situation later. Himimi nodded, then straightened her face and said seriously, Identity unknown, Ray Minkai. I am Inspector Himimi. Now, according to the first regulation of the Abyss Defense Law, I propose to forcibly take over your personal safety. From the time this regulation takes effect until you reach the safe area determined by this inspector, I, Himimi, will be fully responsible for the personal safety of you and your relatives. What do you want to do? Ray Minkai's face changed and asked. Veretta and other soldiers standing not far away also raised their guns and pointed at Himimi, who suddenly announced that she wanted to forcibly take over Ray Minkai's personal freedom. Calm down. Calm down. Himimi shook her head with a wry smile, raised her right hand to show that she meant no harm, and explained helplessly, Ray Minkai, if you want to save Euphemia, this is the only way. In this world, whether it is the Britannia Empire, the EU, or the Chinese Federation, it is impossible to save this little guy and Euphemia. Why should I believe you? Ray Minkai asked. Sigh. Communicating with people who have lost their memories is really troublesome. Himimi scratched her head in distress, and finally opened the communication channel and called, Fairy, leave the current orbit and perform a landing mission. Target, Neon Kyushu, Fukuoka City. Use my location as the landing point. After that, Himimi spread out her right hand, looked at Ray Minkai, looked at the others, and said, If you want proof, then this is proof. In the girl's kind words, a huge shadow like a hill broke through the clouds and slowly descended from the sky toward Fukuoka City. It was a supergiant battleship, whether in terms of appearance or other aspects, that was different from the design concepts of today's countries in the world. Not to mention anything else, just by looking at the nearly 1,600 meters long hull, everyone knew that the technology contained in this battleship that descended from the sky was definitely several levels above the world. This point, just by looking at Royd's face that became fanatical, could be proved. This is my flagship, Demonis. Do you have any other opinions? Chapter 63. Under the traction of the 3 anti-gravity beams, the broken long-fanged lion slowly rose from the ground into the air and was moved into the Naku of the ferry, suspended in the sky. On the ground, there were also many people watching in surprise as the long-fanged lion, which was larger than any KMF body, was pulled into the sky by only 3 seemingly light beams. Among them, Royd's expression was the most exaggerated and the most complicated. A moment ago, he was still amazed by the spectacle in front of him, but the next second, he was worried. Royd, is it really okay for Kay to leave like this? Compared to Royd, whose expression was constantly changing, Sethel focused on Ray Minkai, who was not far away, explaining things to Veretta. Just now, after Mimi expressed that she had no malicious intentions, Ray Minkai finally chose to believe Mimi. There was no other reason. As long as one saw the 1,600-meter long giant battleship and the mobile medical cabin that flew down from it, anyone with a rational mind would make the same choice. What's more, after the dying Euphemia was put into the mobile medical cabin, her vital signs that were only one step away from death gradually recovered and gradually returned to normal. With this kind of change, even Cornelia and Scanazel, who were connected to the satellite communication and immediately contacted Ray Minkai and the others, couldn't say anything. In the end, Cornelia and Scanazel both approved of Ray Minkai's choice. Veretta, the governor means that he doesn't want to disband Department Q. So in the next few days, Department Q and the task of assisting Royd in testing the body will be handed over to you. Ray Minkai looked at Veretta, who had been helping him take care of Department Q as his right-hand man since she was ordered to assist him, and he thanked her from the bottom of his heart. Veretta knew. Thank you very much for your help during this time. Veretta's expression turned serious as she performed a knight salute to Ray Minkai. Yes, my lord. I and everyone in Department Q are waiting for you to return with the recovered Her Highness Euphemia. Ray Minkai looked at Veretta's resolute expression and his subordinates who were standing not far away and saluting him as a knight. He nodded silently and saluted them back. Thank you very much. After saying that, Ray Minkai turned around and returned to the medical pod floating beside Himimi. Have you all said your goodbyes? Himimi sized up Ray Minkai, then looked at Royd and Sayer, who were standing beside the Valkyrie. I think they still have something to tell you. Upon hearing this, Ray Minkai turned to look at Royd, only to find that Royd was smiling and waving at him, while Cecil was still sobbing. Seeing this scene, Ray Minkai smiled helplessly. That's it. Royd may just want to follow and get closer to your battleship. Just touch my battleship. That's it. Sure. Himimi raised her eyebrows and said straightforwardly, Sure enough. As soon as he heard Himimi allow him to board the huge battleship, Royd immediately wanted to rush up, but he was quickly stopped by Cecil. Royd, what are you doing? Kay is going to save Her Highness Euphemia. I can't let you waste any more time. As Cecil screamed, the fanatical Royd was dragged away by Cecil. Himimi's mouth twitched as she secretly shook her head. Let's go. As soon as her voice fell, an anti-gravity beam suddenly shot down from the sprite over Fukuoka City, sending Ray Minkai, Himimi, and the medical cabin carrying Euphemia and the white cat back to the sprite. Salute. On the ground, Veretta led her subordinates to pay their most solemn salute to the sprite that took in Ray Minkai and others, then slowly rose into the air and disappeared above the thick clouds. For them, in order to save Euphemia, Ray Minkai, who decided to go to the unknown world alone, was undoubtedly a hero in their hearts. At the same time, Ray Minkai, who entered the sprite, saw another scene different from the interior of the battleship used by the Britannia Empire. Concise, neat, and efficient. Whether it was the interior layout or the design of the passageway, they all revealed a concise and clear design concept. Even when Ray Minkai came to the interior of the battleship for the first time, he could get a hint of where the passageway would lead from the holographic projection screens that appeared on the left and right sides of the passageway. It was just that Ray Minkai did not have the authority to pass through the checkpoints in each area. Come with me. What we have to do now is to arrange Euphemia and the little guy into the medical room. Without waiting for Ray Minkai to ask what to do next with Euphemia and the white cat, Himimi took the lead and made the arrangements. Nana, arrange the operating room. As Himimi's voice fell, a petite figure with at least 2 meters long blonde hair and a face somewhat similar to Himimi appeared beside Himimi in the blink of an eye. Understood. It's been arranged. Sister Mimi. The cute petite figure nodded and responded, then looked at Ray Minkai. That pair of big eyes opened and closed, full of curiosity. Nana, this is our guest. He and this sister are going to take our battleship to Homecoming Star. Their names. Himimi frowned and looked at Ray Minkai. Is your name still Kay? Ray Minkai looked down at Euphemia, who was holding his mask tightly even though she was unconscious, and said the name he had not heard for a long time. Ray Minkai. That's my real name. Is that so? Himimi raised her eyebrows without surprise. Nana, his name is Ray Minkai, and this sister is Euphemia. Oh. The petite figure named Nana nodded, then looked away and began to remotely control the medical cabin, carrying Euphemia and White Cat Zero to the medical room. Don't worry, they will be fine. Since you have chosen to cooperate with our work, then in return, we will give an equal response. Himimi saw that Ray Minkai still wanted to follow, so she explained. Ray Minkai heard, pondered for a while, then changed the topic to the petite figure guiding the medical cabin to the medical room. Which one? That's my sister. My sister from the same mother. Her name is Inanna. She is the mental core of this battleship. Unexpectedly, Himimi shocked Ray Minkai as soon as she opened her mouth. Mental core? Androids? Ray Minkai thought for a while, but still could not understand the meaning of the term mental core. Even if he could vaguely understand the term, he could not clearly explain the meaning of the term. Androids? Himimi rolled her eyes, shook her head in distress, and gave up the idea of explaining the mental core. If you want to think of it this way, it's okay. After all, the situation of my sisters is a bit special. But I hope you're not afraid of them. Afraid? Ray Minkai's face was full of black question marks. She was a cute little girl with golden hair that was almost 2 meters long and could drag on the ground. From time to time, she would reveal a sleepy and confused look on her face. How could she make people feel afraid? Ray Minkai seemed to have no way or reason to convince himself with this question. You will know in the future. Himimi shook her head helplessly and walked in front. Let's go. If you don't keep up, Nana will go far away. Under the leadership of Himimi, Ray Minkai soon came to the medical room and saw Euphemia, who had changed into a clean patient gown under the operation of many medical machines, lying on a metal bed. Above her, several light probes were moving slowly, seemingly to detect Euphemia's physical condition. Sister Mimi. After testing, Euphemia has a total of 16 fatal injuries and no less than 100 injuries of various sizes. I didn't expect her to be able to persist until now with these injuries that would kill an ordinary person immediately. With a flash of light, the petite blonde girl, Hinana, appeared next to Himimi again, and her cute face was full of surprise. Can it be cured? Himimi thought for a while and added a sentence. It's a physical injury. Hinana nodded. Yes, if it's just physical injuries, the equipment on the Demonis is enough to deal with it. But if it's another level of injury, I'm afraid it can only be solved when we return to the City of Stars. Another level of injury? Ray Minkai became nervous when he heard it. He didn't understand what Himimi and Himimi were talking about when they talked about another level. Yes, another level of injury. Himimi didn't keep him in suspense, but gave the answer without hesitation. Euphemia has been in contact with you and the little guy for some reason. Hinana, who stood next to Himimi, took over Himimi's words and raised her hand to summon a data browsing chart with many fluctuations of data. In short, Sister Euphemia, you and the kitten have become a community of destiny. Community of destiny? Ray Minkai thought for a while and immediately realized the meaning of community of destiny. In other words, in the previous battle, the battle of the long-fanged lion, Shonita, affected Euphemia. Himimi shifted her gaze and threw the question to her sister. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a big reaction, but it may be because of the battle with the abyssal body, coupled with Sister Euphemia's injury when the paper boat was hit, and other factors that led to the current complicated situation. After Inanna finished speaking, she pointed her finger at her lips and thought for a while. Of course, this is just my personal guess. The conclusion can only be reached when we return to the City of Stars. The City of Stars. Ray Minkai looked at Euphemia, who was gradually receiving treatment while surrounded by many medical machines, and said in a deep voice, "Now, are we going to the City of Stars you mentioned?" "Yes. Bringing you back to the City of Stars is my mission this time." "Of course. After that, Euphemia will also recover." Chapter 64. Moon, L2 Universe. Before the humans of this world had really set foot in this universe, a huge battleship was quietly docked here, the Ferry. At this time, this cosmic battleship that was preparing to return was making the final preparations for hyperspace travel. Hyperspace engine charging begins. Hyperspace astrology activated. Astrology data reading complete. 5 minutes left before the hyperspace warp start point. Hyperspace route code X3S 000901 JSC. Navigation mark confirmed. Link route confirmed. The little blonde girl, standing in the middle of the aperture in the center of the bridge, had countless data flowing through her eyes, and there were flashes of light constantly flowing around her body. She slowly closed her eyes, and when she opened her eyes again, she looked at the black-haired girl standing next to her and said slowly, "Captain, hyperspace engine charging confirmed. Hyperspace travel can be started at any time." "Uh-huh." Mimi nodded, looked back at the surprised Ray Minkai, smiled and said, "Are you scared?" Ray Minkai heard this and shook his head. "Just surprised. I didn't expect Inanna to have such a side." "Just surprised? Then you're lucky. If it were anyone else, I'm afraid they would be scared by Nana's appearance." Mimi raised her eyebrows, hugged her sister Inanna from behind, pinched her little face, and said, "Although she looks like a little girl, in fact, Nana is much stronger than me." Sister Mimi, let go. You're hurting me." Inanna, whose little face was pinched by her sister, said weakly. Mimi smiled and then let go. "Then, Ray Minkai, do you want to talk to your subordinates again? Otherwise, when the hyperspace travel begins, you and your princess will be temporarily isolated from this world." Mimi's question did not cause Ray Minkai to hesitate. He slowly shook his head, and the look on his face was unusually firm. "Let's start. This is the only way to save Euphemia and find my lost memories. It looks like you've already made up your mind." Mimi nodded appreciatively and turned to look at Inanna. "Nana, let's begin." As soon as Mimi gave the order, the dim light surrounding Inanna's body lit up. Order confirmed. Activate the hyperspace engine. Under Inanna's command, countless commands quickly converged into the hyperspace engine. As the hyperspace engine was fully activated, bolts of lightning burst out in the sector not far ahead of the Demonis, twisting their bodies wildly. Even though Ray Minkai, who was standing in the middle of the bridge, couldn't hear the sound caused by the raging lightning in the void, he could still feel the shock brought by the bursts of lightning from the dancing snakes that occupied the entire screen. The formation of the hyperspace rift is confirmed. The output of the hyperspace engine is stable. Captain. At this moment, Inanna's large eyes were already occupied by the streams of light formed by countless numbers of data. Mimi did not dare to delay. After getting Inanna's confirmation, she immediately raised her hand and waved forward. The Demonis. Hyperspace voyage depart. Hyperspace voyage depart. The moment Mimi and Inanna's voice sounded one after another, the Demonis turned into a stream of light and rushed into the thunderstorm. Ray Minkai's vision turned white, and he could not help but fall into a trance. When he regained consciousness, he found that in front of him was a colorful and bizarre world. "You're awake?" Mimi's voice sounded from the side. From her words, she seemed to be very satisfied with Ray Minkai's performance at this time. How long have I been unconscious?" Ray Minkai frowned and remembered the scene before the Demonis entered the hyperspace voyage. It seemed that not long ago. Not long. It's only 3 to 5 minutes. This is a normal phenomenon during the first hyperspace voyage. Himimi nodded and explained to Rei Minkai. Because the laws of physics in every universe are different, our warship is adjusted to adapt to the laws of physics. The reason why you are in a trance is also because of the self-protection mechanism triggered by the readjustment of the laws of physics. It's not. However, when Inanna picked up Himimi's words and continued to explain, she suddenly let out a cry of surprise. I got it. Nana, what did you think of? Himimi blinked her eyes. She didn't understand why her sister was suddenly so surprised. Sister. Rei Minkai doesn't know why he lost his memory, right? Maybe I know the reason. Hinana waved her small hand, summoned the projection screen, and tried to explain the hypothesis she just thought of. Sister Mimi, we all know that our warship has the function of physical readjustment. But Rei Minkai doesn't have it. At least before he met us, he didn't come into contact with this kind of thing. After Himimi heard Hinana's words, she pondered for a moment. So, Rei Minkai's memory loss is because his original world and this world have a conflict in the laws of physics, resulting in his memory loss? It's very likely. Hinana's big eyes blinked. According to the current situation, it's very likely. But we still have to go back to Xingyao City to confirm it. Are you discussing the reason for my memory loss? Listening to the two sisters' discussion, Rei Minkai pondered for a while and finally understood the meaning of the readjustment of the laws of physics. Yes, if it's really because of this, maybe it can help you recover your lost memory. Hinana waved her small fist and said proudly, Really? If that's the case, thank you very much. Rei Minkai thanked her solemnly. No, you don't have to be so serious. Hinana was taken aback for a moment and waved her hand shyly. That's just my speculation. Okay. Nana, activate the hyperspace radar and pay attention to the gravity shock around you. This journey won't be peaceful. Himimi clapped her hands and gave Inanna a new task. She then turned to look at Rei Minkai. There are about 12 standard hours left before we arrive at Xingyao City. Do you want to get something to drink? I think you have something to ask, right? Rei Minkai nodded. A few minutes later, the two came to the rest area in the central area of Ferry. Himimi stood in front of the automatic bar and looked at Rei Minkai. Do you have whiskey? Rei Minkai asked casually. Himimi rolled her eyes. Minors are not allowed to drink. Black tea or green tea? Rei Minkai was taken aback. He looked at Himimi up and down. This little girl looked underage, but she was very vicious. Not to mention this huge battleship. Just the Void Walker and the Winged Flame 3 around it were enough to drive the entire army of Earth crazy. She was still underage? Rei Minkai twitched the corner of his mouth. Black tea then. Beep. A crisp sound rang. A black shadow flew out from Himimi's hand and landed precisely in Rei Minkai's hand. Rei Minkai lowered his gaze to take a look. Master Kong, iced black tea. These words were written on the wrapping paper on the bottle. Rei Minkai's eyes twitched a few times, and he almost couldn't hold back the ridicule that came from the depths of his soul. Himimi seemed to be a little surprised by Rei Minkai's reaction and asked casually, You recognize the packaging of this black tea? This is the black tea that my dad had someone produce. That's a good interest. Rei Minkai opened the bottle cap and took a sip. After feeling the familiar taste, he sighed and asked casually, I've been listening to you talk about the Abyss Defense Method. What exactly is this Abyss Defense Method? It actually made you treat it as an iron law to do things? Abyss Defense Method? Himimi pulled a stool over, sat down, and casually swiped on the table, and then moved back and forth on the projection screen that popped up. If I want to talk about the Abyss Defense Method, I have to talk about the history of the Abyss. It's very long. Are you sure you want to hear it? It's fine. Didn't you say that we still need 12 hours to reach the destination? Rei Minkai walked to the opposite side of Himimi, pulled a stool, and sat down. Okay. Himimi swiped her right hand, and a projection screen appeared in front of Rei Minkai. In fact, if you want to tell this story in detail, 12 hours is not enough. So let's keep it short. Himimi organized her words and began to speak tirelessly. In a distant era, a super race that was as omnipotent as gods appeared in a certain universe. They were worshipped as gods by all the civilizations in that universe, and they were called prophets. In the face of all the races that worshipped them as gods, the prophets answered almost every request. They guided the path for many backward and immature races that couldn't even step out of their mother planet. They led them onto the new stage of the universe. Under the leadership of this race of gods who are undoubtedly merciful, even though the universe is boundless and dark, it presents a peaceful and friendly atmosphere. No matter how terrible the hatred between the races was, under the leadership of the prophets, they were finally reconciled. Hearing this, Ray Minkai couldn't help but say, "It sounds like the ideal place, Elysium." Himimi shook her head. "I don't know. The relevant historical records said so." Ray Minkai didn't delve deeper. He just couldn't help but speak. So, he returned the topic to Himimi. Himimi picked up the black tea in front of her, took a sip, and continued. At some point in that harmonious and prosperous era, a sudden war broke out. Himimi stretched out her finger and swiped on the projection screen in front of her, pointing to the mural that looked like graffiti that appeared on it. "This is the only record of the battlefield in this world. Before we found this mural in a fallen area of the abyss, we only knew about that history and could only pass down this history orally." Hearing this, Lei Minkai looked over with rapt attention. He discovered that the seemingly childish mural seemed to be an illusion as his gaze wandered. But at the same time, it wasn't an illusion. From top to bottom, the murals were circular patterns that looked like stars. They were separated on the left and right, and each had a different style. It was a huge fleet that was distinguished in black and white. Below the two, there was a lion-faced man, a human with pointed ears that looked very similar to the elves in the legends, a human with a pair of wings on his back, and a humanoid creature with a pointed head and a beard at the mouth, and so on. The star at the top of the mural was slowly rotating, and two huge fleets were fighting fiercely. The various civilizations at the bottom gave Ray Minkai a feeling of begging for mercy, or even begging. When Ray Minkai moved his eyes to the star again, a familiar and unfamiliar darkness suddenly erupted from the center of the star. This is the abyss. As soon as Ray Minkai felt the aura, he stood up from the stool. Yes. Himimi nodded, raised her hand, and fixed the image on the projection screen at the moment when the darkness swallowed the star. She pointed to it and said, "Although there may be some deviations in this mural, according to our follow-up investigation, the history on this mural should be true." As she spoke, Himimi looked up at Ray Minkai and said word by word, "The abyss should be the phenomenon caused by the war between the two hostile civilizations that created the two huge fleets." So far, this phenomenon caused by war has wiped out at least tens of trillions of civilizations in the incalculable dimensional universe. Himimi sighed deeply, looking a little helpless. In a long river of time, any civilization that encountered the invasion of the abyss couldn't resist its invasion. They could only struggle in vain and watch themselves eventually being swallowed by the abyss. Even thousands of years ago, at the moment when many civilizations and races were about to be swallowed by the abyss, the ultradimensional fortress that suddenly descended from the void pulled back many civilizations and races from the edge of destruction, but it only increased the survival of the civilizations and races. Ray Minkai frowned deeply. He had never thought that the birth and existence of the abyss would be so long ago and so terrifying. Then, the abyss defense method was born under this background? Himimi shook her head and nodded again. "You can say that, but it's not completely accurate. The birth of the abyss defense method originated from 15 years ago, the day the Pioneer was born." Pioneer? The Forerunners. At first, except for a few people, no one knew how he appeared in the ultradimensional fortress. It wasn't until he suddenly received the blessings from the prophets who had disappeared for countless eras that the world noticed his existence. From a moment the eyes of all civilizations and races gathered on the Pioneer, for the continuation of civilization and to accumulate strength to counterattack the Abyss. The Abyss defense method was born under the leadership of the Pioneer, the Queen of the Castle, and the ultra-dimensional fortress's main control, AI, Veros. Then, perhaps it was an era of heroes. After listening to this story, Ray Minkai couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 65. Euphemia's treatment was coming to an end. As Inanna said, just relying on the medical machinery on Demonis was enough to heal Euphemia's injuries. It was just an injury on another level. Euphemia was lying on the other side, like the white cat State Zero, who fell into a deep sleep again. She would only be treated after reaching the City of Stars. Fortunately, this 12-hour journey was coming to an end. Standing outside the infirmary, Lei Minkai looked at the sleeping Princess Euphemia through a layer of glass and shook his head inwardly. He suddenly felt that it was a little unreal. According to Himimi, he should have completely left the previous world, passed through the space-time barrier, and was about to enter another universe where the City of Stars was located. Such a rapid change made Ray Minkai a little confused. Beep beep. With a few beeps in his ear, Hinana also appeared next to Ray Minkai. Of course, this was still a holographic projection. Ray Minkai, Demonis is about to leave the transdimensional waterway. Do you want to come to the bridge to take a look? Hinana suggested. Ray Minkai retracted his gaze and nodded. If he missed the memory of the moment when they left the transdimensional waterway, Ray Minkai might feel that this journey was missing something. Ray Minkai, who followed the light on the passage, soon arrived at the bridge. Himimi and Hinana were already waiting there. Good morning. Did you sleep well last night? As soon as Himimi saw Ray Minkai coming in, she waved the fried dough stick in her hand. After talking with Himimi about the Abyssal Defense Law, it was already late. So, Himimi asked Hinana to prepare a guest room for Ray Minkai, and they went to their respective places to rest. However, Himimi, who was enjoying her breakfast, glanced at Ray Minkai's haggard face and knew that Ray Minkai must not have slept all night. Hinana, who was standing at the side, also agreed. After all, it would be difficult for Hinana, the core of this battleship, to not notice such a living person standing outside the medical room all night without sleeping. There's some coffee and some buns here. Do you want some? Himimi put down the youtiao in his hand and pointed at the teapot on the folding table beside Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai blinked his dry eyes and nodded. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. It was brewed with coffee powder. No matter if it's me or Nana, we're not used to grinding coffee beans and making coffee ourselves. Himimi picked up the deep-fried dough stick again and said while chewing, and Hinana sat next to her obediently, holding a glass of milk and sipping it. Are we leaving the hyperspace channel? After drinking coffee for a while and eating a meat bun, Ray Minkai felt much more energetic. It's about time. Himimi threw the last bite of the deep-fried dough stick in her mouth, nodded, and picked up a tissue to wipe her hands. Nana. Oh, Hinana responded, drank the milk in the cup in one gulp, and immediately began to work. Hyperspace channel confirmed. Now, starting to execute the procedure of leaving the hyperspace channel. In the blink of an eye, under Hinana's control, the folding table with breakfast on it was suddenly put away, and it returned to the original, simple, and neat bridge. Coordinates confirmed, begin to depart. Suddenly, Lei Minkai felt his mind go into a trance again. This time, he was no longer unaware of the outside world like the previous time, but he knew that the Demonis had left the hyperspace channel and returned to the real world. When Ray Minkai's consciousness recovered again, he found that the big screen in front of him was showing a city floating above the void. That's the City of Stars? Ray Minkai was stunned and asked subconsciously. Of course. That's the City of Stars. How is it? Isn't it magnificent? Himimi nodded, and there was a little pride on her face. Himimi's pride had a reason. No matter who it was, as long as they saw the supergiant city floating quietly above the void, they would be shocked. It was a super huge space city protected by a shield wall force field activated by 6 giant force field device pillars with a height of 10 kilometers and a diameter of at least 1 kilometer. The giant force field with colorful lights was like a lid on the steel foundation with a diameter of 15 kilometers, providing unparalleled weather conditions and environmental protection for the life living in the space metropolis. Below the foundation of the space city, which had layers upon layers of buildings of different heights, was a different scene. At first glance, there was no way to estimate the number of spaceports that were arranged on both sides of the foundation that extended downward for at least 5 kilometers. Every minute, no, it should be every second, these spaceports distributed on both sides of the foundation had an endless stream of spaceships coming in and out. Ray Minkai's lips moved, but there was no way to find any suitable words in his mind to express his feelings and his admiration for the City of Stars. Hee, don't worry about it. It's just that it's inevitable for people who see the City of Stars for the first time to have this kind of situation. This is a matter of course. Hinana, who had just finished dealing with the aftermath of the hyperspace voyage, smiled and comforted. This really surprised me. Is this also created by the Abyssal Defense Law? Ray Minkai shook his head. No, it's not. This is designed by our SPF authority and built by gathering all the forces of the Qin army. In other words, this is a miracle that we designed and built alone. In addition, behind this Star Glory City is a solar system that was reclaimed by our Qin army from the hands of the monster called BTA more than 10 years ago. Himimi proudly puffed out her chest. Hinana, who was standing next to her, also nodded her head in agreement. Built by ourselves? This is really... Before Ray Minkai could finish his sentence, a piercing alarm suddenly tore through the air of the bridge and screamed crazily in the ears of Ray Minkai and the other two. Nana, confirm the situation. In the blink of an eye, Himimi's face became extremely serious and dignified. But before Inanna started to move, an extremely familiar voice to Himimi and her sister suddenly sounded. Identification number QLN0000901, Macross Ferry. There is an emergency situation. According to the relevant regulations of the Abyss Defense Law, your ship has been requisitioned. Please arrive at the assembly point A003 within half an hour and wait for the next instruction. Viros. When Himimi heard this familiar voice, she could not help but be taken aback and quickly asked, Viros, what happened? Why are they requisitioning Ferry? What about the City of Stars and Planet Homing's Guardian Fleet? Valkyrie Himimi's identification ID has been confirmed. Hello, Valkyrie Himimi. Welcome back to the City of Stars. Now, inside the GLX 000926 spacetime channel, a pursuit is taking place. According to the forecast 5 minutes ago, the pursuit will affect the City of Stars in half an hour. Hinana immediately shouted. Wes rose. Intelligence link. I need the relevant data to make a tactical deduction. ID confirmed. Hinana, the mental core of Ferry. Intelligence link has been established. Tactical estimation can be made at any time. In an instant, a dark purple stream of light lit up around Inanna's body, and at the same time, her eyes were also drowned by the bright golden light. Calculation complete. The pursuit is between the Abyss Cosmic Type Beta and the 117th Fleet, which has just completed the battle plan and returned to the City of Stars to rest. In addition, according to the conclusion derived from the available intelligence, the force scale of the Abyss Cosmic Type Beta tailing the 117th Fleet may reach as many as 3 main fleets. What? Abyss Beta? How did those ugly monsters appear here? Our third defense line is 10 light-years away. How did these ugly monsters with the size of 3 main fleets pass through our defense line without being discovered? Himimi's eyes widened, and she could not believe the results of Inanna's tactical deduction. But this is the truth. Viros, according to my calculations, the 117th Fleet should have encountered some accidents on the way back to rest, which led to the arrival of the Abyss Beta, right? Indeed. According to my calculations, There's an 80% chance that this will be the result. Therefore, we must be prepared for defense before the pursuit leaves the transdimensional waterway, in order to avoid the battle affecting the City of Stars. The voice that Himimi had assumed to be Viros said, "Understood. Nana, change course. Go to the assembly point A003. After making the decision, Himimi looked back at Ray Minkai and said apologetically, "I'm very sorry. Originally, I planned to hold a welcome party for you after Euphemia woke up. Now it seems that this welcome party will have to be delayed for some time." Ray Minkai, who had been watching from the side, shook his head and expressed his understanding. "It's just delayed for some time. Compared to this, I want to know, is there anything I can do? This is a fierce battle, isn't it? If I just sit here like this, I'm afraid I'll feel bad." Mimi frowned a little awkwardly and finally raised her head and shouted, "Viros, Ray Minkai applies to participate in the next battle." Order confirmed. Ray Minkai, original, identity ID not registered. Based on Article 33 of the Abyss Defense Law, any ambitious person who is determined to resist the invasion of the Abyss will be our brothers and sisters and should be given understanding and support. Ray Minkai, according to your pilot level, you will be granted a temporary identification code GP000101 and will be assigned to the 5th Squad of the 1st Battalion on the battlefield as a logistics pilot to participate in the upcoming battle. In addition, you will get a Model VF-1EX as the airframe to participate in this battle. Finally, please pay attention to your safety. We don't want to see any ambitious person sacrifice meaninglessly on the battlefield to resist the invasion of the Abyss. Chapter 66. VF-1X. Although its airframe design was designed nearly a century ago, 10 years ago, due to the push of some unified generals, it was reborn with the most advanced materials and new power packs and other cutting-edge technologies. Himimi stood in front of the VF-1EX that was sent to Neku by superdimensional fortress AI Viros. She stroked the fuselage while explaining to Ray Minkai. "Perhaps when you hear that this is an antique from nearly a century ago, you will feel a little backward. But I can tell you responsibly that this VF-1EX is not inferior to the VF-171EX of the same period." VF-171X? Is it a follow-up of the same series? Ray Minkai raised his hand to touch the cold armor of the VF-1EX and looked at the fighter painted in white, yellow, and black. Yes, whether it is the VF-1 or the VF-171, they all belong to the same series. In addition, this VF-1EX also has a pilot-assisting AI, which allows you to familiarize yourself with space combat as soon as possible. This is also why Viros arranged the VF-1EX for you. Himimi jumped lightly and jumped next to the cockpit of the VF-1EX. She opened the cockpit cover and motioned for Ray Minkai to come up. Ray Minkai boarded the cockpit and sat down inside. Himimi reached out and pressed on the console on Ray Minkai's left. Beep beep. With a crisp prompt, a spherical object slowly rose from the console, and in the process of rising, a bracket of the same length extended out from the left and right. Then, the spherical object slowly formed a circle in the direction facing Ray Minkai, and it began to collapse inward and gradually turned into a camera. After the camera stretched and adjusted, it focused on Ray Minkai's face. "Assistant AIJ-063, at your service." Snap. Himimi snapped her fingers. "Look, isn't it simple? The VF-1EX is not something that those generals deliberately created to show their feelings." Ray Minkai rolled his eyes and finally set his eyes on the camera that was staring at him. "AIJ-063, can I call you that?" "Yes. This is my ID number," the spherical object said. "Then what is my next mission? Do you know?" Ray Minkai tried to ask. Inquirer confirmed. "Ray Minkai, your current mission should immediately go to the assembly point A003, find the 5th Squad of the 1st Brigade, and report to the squad leader. Special reminder. Now, There are still 25 minutes until the assembly time. Assistant AI J063 meticulously explained what Ray Minkai needed to do. Look, wouldn't it be very helpful? In the following actions, it will help you in more areas. After all, you have never come into contact with space combat before this. Himimi was very satisfied with the assistant AI's performance. Thank you. Ray Minkai nodded, then said, but I should leave now. The fairy and my mission shouldn't be the same type. Himimi nodded. You're right. The fairy will always play the role of a sharp knife. For the current you, this is undoubtedly a suicidal choice. So, you choosing to leave now is the wisest choice. Himimi unceremoniously placed the current situation in front of Ray Minkai. And Ray Minkai was not discouraged. In this short contact, Ray Minkai had already understood how cruel the gap between him and this world was. Therefore, in order to familiarize himself with this world faster, Ray Minkai also fearlessly chose to set foot on this space battlefield that he had never set foot on and never imagined. As the landing platform lifted the VF-1EX into space, Ray Minkai, who had changed into the EX armor prepared for him by Viros, opened up his eyes and became magnificent. As far as the eye could see, there were space warships with a whole length of no less than 1,000 meters. They circled around the two giant battleships, each of which was about 4,000 meters long. Each of them formed a horizontal line with their cannons pointed forward. That's the way Wu Fleet of Star Glory City and Homing Star. They're the 2nd Fleet and the 8th Fleet. The first battlefield support team you are going to report to belongs to the 8th Fleet. The navigation data has been entered into J063's database. Please don't go the wrong way. At this time, Hinana's voice sounded. Thank you very much. Then, see you later. Ray Minkai thanked her. See you later. Then, the VF-1EX soared into the sky. The process of going to the rendezvous point did not take up too much Ray Minkai's time. He quickly found his temporary team. However, before he could find the team leader he belonged to, the battle suddenly began. Bursts of lightning suddenly exploded in the void. In the midst of this frenzied dance, a crack that tore the stable space in front of him apart appeared. Immediately afterward, a battleship full of scars, billowing smoke, and even sparks with a large number of monsters crawling on the hull of the battleship rushed out of the crack first. At the same time, an emergency communication also spread to the newly assembled fleet amidst the hoarse screams. Help! Help! This is the 117th Fleet. We were attacked by the Abyss Beta on the way back. Now, more than half of the 117th Fleet has been lost, and the flagship Loas is leading the remaining forces to delay the attack of the Abyss Beta as much as possible. Please prepare for defense as soon as possible. The response to this scarred, friendly battleship was not comforting words, nor were there bold words to encourage it to continue to persevere, but a solid and powerful attack. In the blink of an eye, as soon as the distress signal ended, dozens of light spots rushed out of the fleet formation, dragging green ribbons of light behind them. They rushed to the side of the battleship that was riddled with scars like lightning and quickly cleaned up the monsters crawling on the hull of the battleship. Then, an auxiliary mech marked with a rescue mark followed closely behind, launching a quick and accurate rescue of the battleship. This round of action was undoubtedly simple and efficient. VF-1EX over there. Report your serial number. While Ray Minkai's attention was attracted by everything in front of him, a rough voice exploded in Ray Minkai's ears. Ray Minkai looked back and found that there was an almost identical VF-1EX flying beside his VF-1EX. Identification number GP000101. Ray Minkai, said Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai, isn't this the teammate arranged for me? Boy, are you a newcomer? First time entering a space battlefield? When the rough voice sounded again, a square face with thick eyebrows and big eyes appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Well, I guess so. Ray Minkai thought for a while and nodded. According to his combat experience, it was indeed his first time participating in a space battle. Before this, most of the battles were on land, and even the air battle was limited to the Kyushu campaign. You're really a newcomer. Come, follow me. I'm the captain of the 5th Squad. My name is Herman. After the square-faced man briefly introduced his name, he drove the aircraft to the 8th Fleet. Ray Minkai followed closely behind. As soon as they returned to the 8th Fleet's fleet formation, the fleet's first wave of attack began. It turned out that when Ray Minkai followed Herman to the 8th Fleet, the flagship of the 117th Fleet, the Loas, was forced out of the hyperspace channel with the remaining battleships by the Abyss Beta. They had to give up the idea of continuing to block the Abyss Beta to buy more time for the rear fleet to prepare. The moment the Abyss Beta left the hyperspace channel, the 2nd and 8th Fleets attacked the enemy with their largest and strongest firepower at the same time. Suddenly, this dark void was illuminated by the light unique to the fierce attacks of the 2nd and 8th Fleets. Particle beams, laser beams, plasma weapons, all of them burst out at this moment without reservation. Countless fireballs sprouted in front of the rift like bamboo shoots after the rain, blooming in the formation of the Abyss Beta that rushed out of the hyperspace rift. In the midst of the blazing energy, the boiling flames were full of the Beta that turned into ashes. If there was air in this void, Ray Minkai would definitely be able to hear the screams that were enough to shake the heavens. Damn it, this didn't stop the attack of these bugs. Herman's expression was a little solemn. Captain, what do you think? Ray Minkai asked shamelessly. There may be a fortress class next. When the time comes, follow behind me and don't act rashly. Herman nodded and spoke out his speculation. The result was just as Herman said. In the midst of the artillery fire, a huge shadow slowly flew out from the rift, surrounded by thousands of lightning bolts. At the same time, around it there were 3 smaller figures, but about the same size as the fairy, following closely behind. The next moment, black spots flew out from the 2 sides of the big and 3 small shadows and quickly gathered in front of them into a huge black cloud. All troops listen to my orders. I'm the commander of the 2nd Fleet and the commander of this interception operation, Alice Bernhard. Now, from the hyperspace channel, the enemy we have been facing for decades, the Abyss Beta, according to the system's calculations, the scale of this Abyss Beta invasion has reached as many as 3 main fleets, including 1 Fortress class, 3 Fortress class, and various other universe betas. The battle plan is very simple. My 2nd Fleet will be responsible for the frontal battlefield, and the 8th Fleet will be responsible for the roundabout battle, waiting for the opportunity to break through to the Fortress class, which is in front of the largest Abyss Beta, and annihilate it. Battle plan above. Everyone, our home is behind us. Let's fight a bloody battle. The blonde beauty in military uniform raised her hand and pulled out the commander's sword from her waist, pointed it forward, and shouted, "All troops, battle begins." Chapter 67. The Fortress Class. The appearance of this 5-meter-long monster attracted everyone's attention, as well as the full firepower of the 2nd Fleet, which was responsible for the frontal attack. The energy weapons that filled the sky frantically smashed toward the central area where the Fortress-class Beta was located. Immediately after, there was a sea of missiles that was like a super-enhanced version of a meteor shower. When the 8th Fleet just separated from the 2nd Fleet and turned around, the 2nd Fleet relied on its own powerful firepower to firmly attract the enemy's attention. The continuous explosions drowned out most of the black cloud in front of the Fortress class, but it also allowed the space betas behind the black cloud to rush out of the area that was flooded by the 2nd Fleet's firepower with the smaller Ranger-class pupae. These cosmic betas that were assimilated by the Abyss did not feel any pain. On the contrary, under the assimilation of the Abyss, they became even crazier and ignored the risk of being attacked. They put on a frenzied charge and did not stop until they died. Newcomer, remember, don't get entangled with the betas, otherwise you will die. Herman, who was watching the battle from a distance, gave the newcomer, Ray Minkai, some advice. Understood, Captain. Ray Minkai was also a little shocked. He didn't expect there to be such a crazy enemy in this world. If these monsters called betas rushed into the world he was in before, it would be a scene of hell. The battle escalated to a more intense level when the fearless battalions and rangers rushed out of the firepower blockade. The moment the battalions and rangers entered the range that they could reach, the intercepting force released by the Second Fleet also rushed in front of them. The battle began immediately. Ray Minkai, who participated in the detour mission, did not pay too much attention to the situation here. Because at this moment, he learned through his assistant AI J-063 that the 5th Squad he belonged to received a mission. Newcomer, follow up. We're going to rescue the cruiser and Awajif. The moment Herman received the mission, he immediately notified Ray Minkai. The next moment, 4 light spots separated from the 8th Fleet's detour team. They were Ray Minkai's 5th Squad. Captain Herman, Sniper Peter, Support Soldier Luo, and temporary member Ray Minkai. Other than Captain Herman, Ray Minkai greeted the other 2 teammates he had just met. He then followed Captain Herman's footsteps and flew to the other side of the battlefield. In the battle just now, the 117th Fleet that was forced out of the transdimensional waterway had received support from the rear fleet, thus avoiding greater losses. But when they left the transdimensional waterway, the remaining forces of the 117th Fleet were scattered across the entire battlefield. Or they could advance with all their might and join up with the rest of the army. Or they could stay where they were and do their best to defend while waiting for reinforcements to arrive. The cruiser Anno-Vacafer was one of the latter. Bit Luo, you guys stay behind to support and guard against the insect reinforcements. Ray Minkai, come with me. As soon as they approached the cruiser Anno-Vacafer, Herman immediately gave the order. Yes, Captain. Peter and Luo replied. At the same time, they also found their own positions around the area and began the mission. Ray Minkai followed Herman and rushed up. As soon as the 2 VF-1EXs with different paint colors approached the air defense range of the cruiser Anno-Vacafer, the space beta guerrillas that were besieging the Anno-Vacafer immediately targeted the VF-1EXs. Come on, insects! Herman shouted excitedly. Immediately afterward, he activated the S-Pack that only the captain had access to. Click! The 4 large backpacks on the back of Herman's VF-1EX opened at the same time, revealing all the missiles hidden inside the backpacks that were ready to be fired. Newcomer, welcome to the space battlefield. This is the captain's gift to you. Watch carefully. In Herman's loud voice, the S-Pack launched all the missiles. In the blink of an eye, the micro-missiles built with the latest technology suddenly dragged a trail of smoke that was enough to drown the VF-1EXs. They rushed to the guerrillas. Boom, boom, boom. Sound could not be transmitted in the universe. However, Ray Minkai subconsciously added the sound of explosions to the shredded missiles of the guerrilla beta soldiers. The fireball disappeared in a flash, leaving behind countless pieces of flesh that were scattered by the shockwave and flew in all directions. However, the guerrilla beta that Herman had annihilated had only occupied a portion of the Anno-Vacafer's siege cruiser. There were even more guerrilla betas who were still clinging onto the Anno-Vacafer, refusing to let go. Suddenly, a ray of light burst out in the void. It lit up from the void, dragging a straight trajectory, and accurately crushed the guerrillas that were trying to attack the bridge of the cruiser Anno-Vacafer. Captain, the Anno-Vacafer sent a message. They can't hold on any longer. They're about to abandon the ship and request support. The next moment, Luo, who was in charge of support, sent a message. Understood. Ray Minkai, begin the support mission. Herman responded and asked Ray Minkai. Roger. Ray Minkai responded and immediately separated from Herman's formation. He followed the guidance of AI J-063 and came to the left side of the Anno-Vacafer. It was an escape pod exit. However, at this time, 2 guerrillas were blocking the exit, making it impossible for the survivors who were ready to pass through here to escape. Ray Minkai pulled the trigger, and a laser machine gun equipped by the VF-1EX also fired a bullet, sweeping along a straight shooting trajectory towards the guerrillas that were surrounding the escape pod. The bullets created sparks on the outer armor and mercilessly pierced through the dense tentacles pouring into the escape pod. The moment Ray Minkai's VF-1EX successfully attracted the attention of the guerrillas. In the next second, the guerrillas that were besieging the escape pod leaped into space and rushed towards the VF-1EX piloted by Ray Minkai. Warning: 2 guerrillas have locked onto you. It is recommended that you take evasive maneuver immediately. J063's cold electronic synthesized voice immediately sounded. Ray Minkai didn't hesitate. He directly turned the VF-1EX around and accelerated in the opposite direction of the escape pod. The 2 guerrillas followed closely behind, looking like they wouldn't give up until they killed Ray Minkai. However, the moment they followed Ray Minkai's VF-1EX out of the shadow of the Anna Wakefer, a cold light flashed. The guerrillas that were biting the VF-1EX's 7 o'clock direction were suddenly penetrated by the cold light from head to toe and exploded. In the explosion, Ray Minkai pushed the throttle and the VF-1EX immediately accelerated. In just a few seconds, the VF-1EX flew to the top of the remaining guerrillas. After a rapid burst of 3 shots, several bloody holes appeared on the gorilla's body. After wildly twisting for a while, the gorillas fell into death. Good job, newcomer. Peter's voice came from the communication channel. Obviously, the cold light just now came from him. Thank you. Ray Minkai smiled. After thanking him, he continued to work on the rescue. Perhaps the attractiveness of the Anna Wakefer was far greater than that of the VF-1EX that Ray Minkai and the others were piloting. Even though Ray Minkai and the others were constantly wiping out the guerrilla beta soldiers blocking the escape hatch, they still could not shake the minds of the guerrilla beta soldiers lying on the hull of the Anna Wakefer. Such a strange behavior made Herman frown, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he sped up the evacuation of the Anna Wakefer. 10 minutes passed. The surviving crew of the Anna Wakefer had all evacuated. Under Ray Minkai's watchful eyes, the Anna Wakefer, which was crawling with guerrilla beta bugs, exploded the moment the countdown ended, bringing the bugs that had severely damaged it to hell. However, just as Ray Minkai and the others were about to cover the survivors and retreat to the rear, the alarm suddenly exploded. Warning! Warning! A number of at least 20 Battle Knight betas and no less than 200 Gorillas betas are rapidly approaching this area. Suggestion: immediately evacuate this area and ask for help from nearby reinforcements. J063's voice sounded again. Ray Minkai shook his head at its suggestion. If at this time there were only 4 VF-1EX, of course, they could choose the option of evacuation. But now, there were nearly 100 escape pods behind them. Compared to the VF-1EX and the Gorilla-level beta, the slower escape capsule would undoubtedly die without the protection of the VF-1EX. Ray Minkai, you cover the escape pods, Herman said in a deep voice. Perhaps he had already made this decision from the beginning. Ray Minkai shook his head and expressed his opinion. I'll stay. Rollo will cover the escape pods. His body is equipped with a high-power communication module, so he can call for reinforcements in a wide range. You? Herman was stunned. He didn't expect Ray Minkai to ask him to stay. Captain, let Rollo go. Peter also spoke. Okay, Rollo, you cover the escape pods and call for reinforcements. Herman no longer insisted and agreed with Ray Minkai and Peter's opinion. Rollo didn't talk nonsense. He simply nodded and flew to the rear with the escape pods. Ray Minkai, if you can survive this battle, I will make a request to the captain to let you become an official member. Herman's irrefutable voice rang out. I'm looking forward to it. Ray Minkai nodded. Chapter 68, 3:220. This extreme disparity in numbers was the situation that Ray Minkai and the other two had to face. Due to the fact that the Anawakif was located outside of the 8th Fleet's route, Ray Minkai and the other two wouldn't be able to receive support from the 8th Fleet in a short period of time. Regardless of the length of the distance, the current situation faced by the 8th Fleet and the task of accurately striking the Fortress-class mothership of the Abyss Beta was enough to prevent the 8th Fleet from providing support to Rei Minkai and the other two in time. Therefore, before support arrived, Rei Minkai and the other two had to fight in this predicament and buy enough time for the escape capsule to retreat to the rear. Neo, no, Rei Minkai. Do you like being a hero? Sniper Peter piloted his VF-1EX and slowly landed on a large piece of wreckage left behind by the explosion of the Anovacifer. He looked at Rei Minkai's VF-1EX through the scope and asked, "No, who doesn't want to be a hero? It's just a lack of opportunity." Rei Minkai chuckled, shook his head, and pretended to be relaxed. "Is that so? Then, now is your chance to be a hero." After Captain Herman was ready to meet the attack, he looked at Rei Minkai's profile and asked seriously, "Rei Minkai, I'll ask you again. If you retreat now, you still have time to catch up with Rollo. Otherwise, you'll have to face the cruel slaughter of 3 vs 220. Rei Minkai closed his eyes and shook his head. "If I wanted to leave, then I wouldn't have proposed to let Rollo evacuate." "Ha! Is that so?" Herman laughed a few times, and his eyes suddenly burst into a burst of light. "Very good. Then, Rei Minkai, if you can keep up, then keep up. Attack! Go!" As soon as the voice fell, Herman's VF-1EX immediately rushed to the enemy. Immediately behind him was Peter, who was already prepared to cover. Bang! 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 The VF-1EX driven by Peter with a model specially strengthened for long-range shooting. The new sniper rifle it was equipped with was created by the joint efforts of many famous snipers and weapons development experts. The purpose of its creation was to kill the space beta above the battlecruiser level as much as possible at the longest distance with power comparable to the cruiser's main cannon. In the blink of an eye, the number of bullets fired by Peter's VF-1EX had surpassed Herman's as it plunged into the midst of the enemy, forcefully tearing a hole in the midst of their ranks. And at the end of the opening was the Battle Knight level BTA that had been blasted into several pieces by 3 specially enhanced sniper bullets. "Well done, Herman." After Herman finished, he pulled Herman's VF-1EX, VF-1EX-1X1X, VF-1EX-1XX, VF-1EX-1 VF-1X1X1X1X. This action is the VF-1EX-1X1X1 VF-1X1X. Herman was indicating that he should try his best to separate the space beta into 2 groups and attract them as much as possible to create as many shooting opportunities for Peter hiding in the back. As soon as Rei Minkai understood this, he responded decisively. Although his body was not equipped with a powerful S-Class backpack, it had acceleration devices attached to the wings on both sides. J063. Pay attention to avoid enemy attacks. Rei Minkai was well aware of his current shortcomings, so he wisely chose to use the assistant AI, which would be of great help to him at this stage. Roger. Operate the radar warning system at full power. Take over the avoidance system. After the spherical device on Rei Minkai's left side issued a series of clear instructions, Rei Minkai immediately felt that the new body under him was obviously not moving. Flexible. Light. Under J063's control, even if the VF-1EX was plunged into the space beta pile by Rei Minkai, it still shuttled through it with ease. Whether it was the beta that was immediately distracted and changed to attack the opposite side, or the warrior-level beta, J063 nimbly piloted the VF-1EX to avoid them without exception. In the blink of an eye, with the help of J063, the VF-1EX traversed the space beta formation from beginning to end. On the other hand, Rei Minkai's risk was a success. After Rei Minkai lured away a portion of the space beta, the remaining warrior level and other warrior level beta closely followed behind the VF-1EX piloted by Rei Minkai. Swoosh! Swoosh! Behind him were beams of light that were constantly emitting fatal rays of light. Behind these beams of light were the warrior-level monsters with strange appearances, but they had the same tentacles and huge eyes that shot out beams of light. They waved their densely packed tentacles of different lengths and turned their huge eyeballs as they charged towards the VF-1EX at an increasing speed. Ray Minkai held the joystick while holding the throttle tightly. He tried to concentrate as much as possible, trying to find a trace of J-063's dodging movements that could allow him to quickly adapt to the battle in front of him, which was far more difficult than driving the Lancelot. That's right, when driving a Lancelot, what Ray Minkai felt was the suppression from performance and the gap in technology. But the fierce battle in front of him was a different situation. Whether it was the VF-1EX or the monster space beta he encountered for the first time, they were all unheard of by Ray Minkai. Slippery bugs. Perhaps this word could be used to describe the current actions of Herman and Ray Minkai. With their joint efforts, the space beta, which far outnumbered them, was separated into two groups. They strolled back and forth in this universe far away from the Eighth Fleet, like dogs being walked. Along the way, not only did Bit, who was hiding in the dark, shoot deadly bullets to help Herman and Ray Minkai out of their predicament, but Herman and Ray Minkai also suddenly adopted a maneuver route that overlapped with each other, and at the moment of overlap, they cooperated to cover each other's shots. Under the cover of the two VF-1EX, the warrior-level beta that followed closely behind them were almost covered in bullet holes of various sizes, and their mobility was greatly affected. Behind these warrior-level beta, there were tentacles that were broken by bullets and scattered flesh and blood. As for the three warrior-level beta, they had already been killed by the sniper Bit at the cost of emptying a magazine. Therefore, the only enemies left on the battlefield were the 150 or so guerrilla betas. It seemed that if he continued to persevere like this, victory would come. "Captain, I only have one magazine left." Bit's voice shattered the dawn of victory in front of them. In the previous battle, Ray Minkai and the others' VF-1EX had consumed more than half of their ammunition, not to mention now that they were left alone to cover the rear. The consequence of such a fierce battle was that they had run out of ammunition. "Ray Minkai, what about you?" Herman piloted the landline with a calm expression and continued to maintain a relatively safe distance to attract the warrior-level beta that was still chasing after them. "The spare magazine has been emptied. There are only 100 rounds left." Ray Minkai glanced at the ammunition monitoring interface in the lower left corner of the screen and quickly reported, "Then let's do it again. Then we'll retreat. Bit, get ready to cover the retreat." Herman estimated the time and immediately made the decision to retreat. "Understood." Ray Minkai and Bit responded in unison. Immediately afterward, Ray Minkai pulled up the nose of his aircraft and pointed it in the direction of Herman. And Herman did the same. They planned to shoot at each other again to reduce the number of warrior-level beta as much as possible, then retreat immediately. Da-da-da-da. The moment Herman's VF-1EX swept past Ray Minkai's eyes, Ray Minkai pulled the trigger without hesitation. The VF-1EX's Gatling gun frantically spat out flickering flames, firing deadly shells at the warrior-level beta behind Herman. Bang! The bullets with powerful penetrating power tore through the body of the warrior-level beta as soon as they entered its body. They mercilessly shredded the body of the warrior-level beta with the most powerful force. Puff, puff. Ray Minkai could clearly hear the sound of blood spraying from the warrior-level beta splashing on the cockpit of the VF-1EX. He also saw the translucent cockpit stained with blood and flesh after the holographic projection. But Ray Minkai's face was still cold, and his eyes were still firm. His finger that was tightly on the trigger never wavered when he killed the warrior-level beta in front of him. Beep, 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 beep. Suddenly, the ammunition monitoring system emitted a sharp sound. The ammunition was exhausted. Ray Minkai pulled the joystick with his left hand, and the VF-1EX pulled up its nose again. He then turned around and changed the combat mode to the Guardian form. He raised the empty Gatling gun in his hand and slammed it into the warrior-level beta that was still biting him. J-063. I'll leave the dodging to you. Ray Minkai shouted again. At the same time, he changed the VF-1EX's combat form back to the fighter form again and accelerated to get rid of the warrior-level beta that was chasing after him again. On the other side, Herman, who had also exhausted his ammunition, did the same thing. Now, Herman and Ray Minkai only had one tactical dagger left. Captain, you guys retreat first. Peter, who was in the rear, said while using the last magazine to provide cover for Herman and Ray Minkai's retreat. Ray Minkai and Herman responded, quickly gathered together, and rushed toward Peter's position at full speed. The moment they passed the large wreckage where Peter was hiding, Peter also jumped up from behind the wreckage and accelerated to catch up with Ray Minkai and Herman. Hey, Captain, how about you do the math? As soon as Peter caught up with Ray Minkai and Herman, he suggested mysteriously, "You installed those gadgets again?" Herman raised his eyebrows and looked at Ray Minkai's VF-1EX and said, "Ray Minkai, you do the countdown." From 1 to 10, Peter added in a timely manner. Although he felt a little strange, Ray Minkai did not doubt him and began to count down casually. 10, 3, 2, 1. As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling ball of light lit up behind Ray Minkai and Herman. Boom! Art is really beautiful. Sniper Peter looked at the dazzling light with shining eyes and exclaimed excitedly. Chapter 69. Even though the art mentioned by Peter looked rather spectacular from afar, in reality, it only reduced the number of pursuers by a small portion and slowed down their speed. However, this was enough. As it turned out, Rollo, who had left first, had indeed managed to contact the reinforcements. Under the guidance of the art exhibition that he and Peter had just performed, the reinforcements quickly found Ray Minkai, Herman, and the others who were retreating in a hurry. The result was obvious. With the help of the reinforcements, the beta that was severely weakened and still chasing after Ray Minkai and the others were quickly eliminated. Before Ray Minkai and the others could breathe a sigh of relief, they were once again faced with a new mission. Fortunately, before this mission began, they could still return to the nearby aircraft carrier to rest for half an hour. After all, it wasn't easy to install the equipment required for the next mission. However, before the new equipment was installed, this new mission was kept a secret for the time being. With doubts, Ray Minkai followed the instructions and retreated all the way back with Herman and the others. With the assistance of the auxiliary AI, J-063, they landed safely on the aircraft carrier named Naku. Only then did he see a clue from the slowly rising gates on both sides of Naku. A glint flashed across Herman's eyes when he saw the true appearance of the object behind the gate. Peter couldn't help but whistle. As for Rollo, he was caught by Ray Minkai and questioned about the mysterious object behind the gate. It was a cylindrical object about 8 to 9 meters long. From its rounded front and narrow back, as well as the thrusters at the back, it wasn't hard to tell that this should be a weapon with great destructive power. Could it be that the next mission was related to this weapon with great lethality? When Ray Minkai asked this question, Rollo's eyes couldn't help but wander back and forth. Due to the confidentiality regulations, Rollo didn't know if he should disclose the next mission to Ray Minkai. One had to know that Ray Minkai was not an official member of the 5th Squad. Tell him, we'll need his signature later. After Herman parked his vehicle, he walked out of the cockpit and said, "Yes, Captain." Luo responded and began to explain. This is a reaction missile. Most of them are weapons with great lethality used in siege missions. In other words, our next equipment is likely to be this. Which one? Ray Minkai pointed to the depths of Naku, a small warehouse that was set up independently in the corner. Under Ray Minkai's gaze, a group of staff members who were obviously dressed differently from the rest of the crew were fully focused. Their expressions were tense as they moved out the missiles that were painted purple and had 2 yellow and 2 black round logos on the warheads. They loaded them onto the vehicles and walked over to Ray Minkai's side. That is the MDE Dimension Devourer. This is not a weapon, we can equip. In the entire battle sequence, only when the fleet commander gives the order will the team leaders of each brigade be equipped with this weapon. When Rollo saw the Dimension Devourer that was sent to the side of Herman's VF-1EX, he couldn't help but exclaim. Obviously, he had already guessed what the next mission was. Next, it was time for the new mission to be unlocked. All the pilots in Naku who were resting in the attack preparation room received the same message. The next second, the pilots who had quickly finished reading the new mission quickly boarded their own bodies and waited for their equipment to be changed and their orders to be issued. It really is this mission. While Rollo was mumbling to himself, Lei Minkai flipped through the contents of the mission several times. All the members of the battlefield support team were uniformly equipped with reaction missiles, and the captain-level pilots were all equipped with the MDE Dimension Devourer. Then, all of them would attack and follow the ace, Brilliant Star, sent by the 8th Fleet to attack the enemy's formation. They would release all the reaction missiles and the MDE Dimension Devourer at the appropriate time to complete the mission of attacking the universe's Beta Fleet and attacking the hyperspace rift that was protected behind the universe's Beta Fleet. Brilliant Star? Lei Minkai thought for a while and tried to ask Rollo about the Brilliant Star again. Unexpectedly, when he mentioned the Brilliant Star, Rollo's expression became a little unnatural. He smiled awkwardly and said helplessly, "That is the ace of our 8th Fleet. There is almost no one who did not know about it. It's just that their personalities are a little jumpy." Jumpy? Yes. The Brilliant Star is a large MA specially developed for mutants. There are 2 pilots, and they're a father and daughter pair. When the time comes, you will know. Rollo did not seem to want to be entangled in the issue of the Brilliant Star for too long. After he hurriedly said what he wanted to say, he took the lead to change his equipment, boarded the elevator, and set off first. When it was Lei Minkai's turn to change his body and enter space again, he saw the legendary Brilliant Star. Lei Minkai raised his eyes and looked forward. He found that there were no less than 100 VF fighters and other humanoid MS fighters that Lei Minkai saw for the first time in front of the aircraft carrier that he was in. The number was still increasing. In the center of the gathering area that was getting larger and larger, there was a huge body about 150 meters long and 30 meters wide. Its entire body was painted brownish red and black. It held a pair of giant claws horizontally, and its entire body looked like a square box that was stacked with building blocks. It was waiting for its allies to arrive from all directions. Lei Minkai, join the team. The mission is about to start. When Herman saw Lei Minkai's VF-1EX take off, he immediately sent a message. Lei Minkai replied. A few minutes passed. After the last MDE Dimensional Devourer entered the formation, a public channel was transmitted to all the mechs participating in this mission. I am Major Patrick Carrezo. I am the overall commander of this assault mission. A man with long red hair appeared on the screen. His first sentence, as an opening remark, sounded very formal and serious. However, in the next instant, this solemn image suddenly collapsed. Listen up. I am Major Patrick Carrezo, the ace that has not lost in 2,000 simulated battles. With me participating in this mission, I will definitely complete it perfectly. Therefore, I request that you, as my assistants, must dedicate this victory to the 2 most important goddesses in my life. Clang! The man who claimed to be Major Patrick Carrezo was suddenly violently knocked on the head by something, causing his clamorous words to come to an abrupt end. Immediately after, it was replaced by a young, no, it could be said that it was a tender little face. It was the face of a little girl. With a cold expression, she said, I am Lieutenant Colonel Lilina Katie Carrezo. I am one of the overall commanders of this mission. Now, I will briefly explain the roles and tasks that you will have to perform in the following mission. A pair of golden eyes quietly lit up under the red hair. The little girl who claimed to be Lilina Katie Carrezo coldly and solemnly arranged the tasks one by one. Lei Minkai's 5th team was arranged to be behind Brilliant Star and follow it to break into the depths of the enemy's fleet formation. In other words, it was in front of the enormous Fortress-class airframe to launch a fatal attack. Mission explanation complete. Everyone advance. In the midst of the tender and solemn voice, Brilliant Star was the first to move, and the rest of the airframes followed closely behind. Looking from afar, the scene of all the airframes attacking was rather spectacular. However, in the cockpit of Brilliant Star, it was a completely different scene. The red-haired man, who was extremely arrogant, just now turned back and looked at the red-haired little girl sitting in the pilot's seat behind him with an aggrieved expression. "Hey, Lilina, it's rare for Daddy to show off for once. Can't you let Daddy show off for once?" The red-haired man, who was extremely arrogant just a moment ago, but now looked aggrieved, as if he was a bullied little wife, gave the little girl a headache. Knowing that she did not have the strong determination and self-control of her mother, the little girl could only take a few deep breaths and continue to maintain the absolute rationality that she possessed after activating the metamorphosis. She said in a deep voice, "Major Patrick Carrezo, have you forgotten that 3 months ago, because of your power and prestige, the 8th Fleet was almost destroyed? Don't you remember that you were only one step away from being promoted to Brigadier General, but you made a mistake and were demoted to Major?" The little girl's cold voice made the red-haired man tremble. He subconsciously remembered the painful memory of his wife, who was supposed to be on maternity leave, angrily boarded her flagship with their newborn son in her arms, crossed several worlds, ran to him, and beat him up. Looking at her father's face gradually stiffening, the little girl sighed secretly. However, his father was already the father of 2 children. He actually still maintained this sloppy appearance. She really didn't know how her mother fell in love with him back then. "Major Patrick Carrezo, we are about to come into contact with the enemy. The operation of the airframe will be handed over to you." The moment the alarm of the enemy appeared on the screen in front of her, the little girl's face suddenly became extremely cold, and the golden light in her eyes became even brighter. "Yes, Lieutenant Colonel. Just watch. My goddess is always by my side." The aggrieved Patrick's face changed in an instant, and he returned to his sloppy appearance. The speed was so fast that the little girl's consciousness couldn't help but stagnate, and she almost broke the mental link with all the armed forces on the planet. Target found. Except for the VF-1EX with reaction bombs and MDEs, all attack. The golden light in Lilina's eyes suddenly erupted, and the box-like body of the planet immediately opened a hatch, launching all the GN fangs and GN missiles stored inside the pod. In the blink of an eye, there was a sea of hell fire in front of the planet. Chapter 70. Ray Minkai didn't know what happened in the cockpit of Yao Xing. He only knew that apart from the pair of giant claws, the body in front of him looked like a square box. It could indeed be called Yao Xing. Beneath the seemingly ordinary appearance, there was actually an extremely terrifying weapon hidden within. Not to mention the autonomous weapon labeled as Jian Fong by AIJ-063. The terrifying amount of ammunition was like a missile attack at the scale of a subfleet. It was enough to make this unassuming box known as Yao Xing. What's more, while releasing Jian's fangs and pouring down the sea of missiles, the pair of giant claws that extended from the square body made the next move. They stretched forward, each turned 90 degrees outward, and then separated up and down, revealing the force field generation sensors hidden in the heavy armor. In the next second, countless particles quickly gathered in the giant claws that revealed all the force field generation sensors. Boom! A beam of light with a diameter of almost 100 meters shot out in an instant, and with an unstoppable momentum, it plunged straight into the group of heavy artillery-level universe betas that were forming an interception formation. The strong and unstable particle energy tore through the seemingly hard but fragile body of the heavy artillery-level universe betas. Under the control of the little girl, Lena moved to the other side, where more heavy artillery-level universe betas gathered. Tear, explosion, it became the main theme of the moment. But the enemy would not just stand by and watch as they were destroyed by the square box. Ignoring the heavy artillery level betas that were focused on by Yao Xing, the cavalry level and ranger level wandering around the formation rushed toward Yao Xing, who was sniping the heavy artillery level betas. Data link sharing, target locked. The first wave of reaction missiles, launch. The little girl Lena's voice sounded in the ears of the ready pilots with the expansion of Yao Xing's data link sharing system. In the first wave, the reaction missiles launched by 25 VF-1EXs immediately drew a white, straight, and firm trajectory in the air, flying toward the cavalry level and ranger level that surrounded Yao Xing. The sun, the bright little sun. Immediately, it rose from the dense crowd of paladin and ranger beta players. The moment the 50 small suns rose, the violent torrent of energy wantonly set off waves of slaughter among the battle knight and ranger beta. Yao Xing and Lina didn't stop their assault. Instead, they unleashed even more ferocious firepower, beating down the enemy while it was down. Jian Fong, Jian Cannon, Jian Missile. In addition, the first wave of reaction missiles launched earlier had become a death sentence for the paladins and rangers who had blocked the Glorious Star's attack. The moment the small sun exploded from the reaction round disappeared, the obstacle formed by this wave of cavalrymen and rangers finally disappeared. The path to the fortress level and the fortress level was opened. Second wave, reaction rounds. Get ready. Lena's voice rang out again as she looked at the temporary gap in the formation. Coupled with the fact that the heavy cannons of the Beta fleet were being suppressed by Luminous Star, Ray Minkai couldn't help but lift his thumb and press the launch button. His VF-1EXs were not in the firing sequence of the second wave of reaction rounds, but that didn't stop him from preparing for the launch. Although Lena didn't say when the third wave of reaction rounds, which was the reaction rounds equipped by Ray Minkai's 5th Squad, will be launched, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the moment the second wave of reaction round were launched and hit the target, it will be the best time to launch the third wave of reaction rounds. Unlike the first and second wave of reaction rounds, the mission of the third wave of reaction rounds was not to kill the enemy, but to disrupt the enemy's formation, so that the captain equipped with the MDE Dimensional Devourer could break through the blockade and shoot the MDE Dimensional Devourer into the hyperspace rift behind the fortress level. This would detonate the Dimensional Devourer and completely disrupt the hyperspace channel. This was what Ray Minkai speculated after learning the role of the MDE Dimensional Devourer. Of course, the development of the current battle seemed to be in line with Ray Minkai's speculation. It was gradually moving toward reality. The little sun rose once again. However, the second wave of reaction rounds did not completely hit the fortress levels surrounding the fortress level. Instead, more than half of them were blocked by the guerrillas released from the fortress level's body at the cost of their own lives. The second wave of reaction rounds had a total of 50 reaction rounds. After more than half of them were blocked by the guerrillas at the cost of their lives, the remaining reaction rounds could only severely injure one fortress level. The third wave of reaction rounds, fire. Lena's voice was still cold, and she wasn't disturbed by the accident in front of her. Lei Minkai decisively pressed the launch button. The two reaction missiles mounted on the underside of the VF-1EX's wings immediately detached, and the thrusters were activated. Together with the reaction missiles launched by the other VF-1EXs, the two reaction missiles launched by the other VF-1EXs majestically charged towards the heavily damaged 4th level and another nearby 4th level. This time, the fortress level beta tried to use the same trick again. However, it forgot that the brilliant star, which had suppressed more than half of the heavy artillery level beta, finally had the time to deal with the guerrillas who tried to intercept the reaction rounds again. A violent torrent of particles once again burst out from the brilliant star's giant claws, mercilessly piercing through the sea of insects gathered by the guerrillas, forcibly opening a path from the inside. A path for the reaction rounds to rush to the fortress level beta and explode. This time, the heavily injured fortress level beta could no longer do anything. It could only watch helplessly as the reaction rounds that symbolized death hit its body and burst into a violent explosion that was enough to kill it. Boom! In the dazzling light, as the fourth and most important wave of attack, Herman and the other captains rushed fearlessly into the dazzling light released by the explosion of the reaction rounds. Everyone, retreat! Lena did not wait for the results of Herman and the others' attack, but decisively issued the order to retreat. When the light faded, Herman and the others' captains once again appeared in everyone's field of vision. A wave of abnormal fluctuations suddenly erupted from the depths of the void, from the space-time rift, and swept across the entire battlefield like a monstrous tsunami. Kacha! Ray Minkai first heard the sound of something breaking. Then he heard a loud roar. Broken. The magical space-time rift was broken. An energy storm that had never been seen before erupted, tearing the almost invincible fortress-level beta apart from the data, making it unable to break free. It could only be torn apart alive by the energy storm and enter the abyss of death. Ray Minkai, who accelerated the retreat from the area where the energy storm erupted, held the joystick tightly, not daring to look back at the broken space-time rift. It was not until he felt the bumps in his body calm down a little that he had the time to look back. Suddenly, Ray Minkai seemed to have seen the most beautiful and spectacular scene in his life. The sector filled with ugly betas and mangled corpses disappeared, replaced by a beautiful nebula that shone with multicolored light. It's over. Ray Minkai's eyes were attracted by the beautiful nebula that he had never seen before, and he asked subconsciously, "Hey, of course it's over. Newcomer, although this battle was unexpected, you have to know that this is at our doorstep. If this battle at our doorstep continues for 10 days to half a month, then our 8th Fleet and the 2nd Fleet should collectively commit suicide." Herman breathed a long sigh of relief. At the same time, he also made fun of Ray Minkai, a newcomer. After lowering his head and fiddling with the computer, Rollo looked up and said, "It is confirmed that the space-time rift link to the GLX 00926 space-time channel is temporarily in an unstable state. The Abyss reaction has disappeared, and the Universe Beta reaction has disappeared. We have won this battle." When Peter heard this, he whistled. "Now, we should have a good vacation, right? Captain, Peter, are you still thinking about your girlfriends?" Herman was very clear about the details of his subordinates. "Of course. It's a waste of youth if you're not a romantic." "Captain," Peter smiled confidently. Suddenly, an emergency communication was connected to the 5th Squad's combat channel. "Captain Herman of the 5th Squad, this is the flagship of the 8th Fleet, Evelia. Please answer if you hear this." Everyone looked at each other. Herman cleared his throat and opened the communication channel. "I'm the captain of the 5th Squad, Herman. What's your order?" "Hello, Captain Herman. According to the battlefield records, does the 5th Squad you belong to have a temporary teammate named Ray Minkai?" "Yes." Herman looked at Ray Minkai's VF-1EX in surprise and simply answered, "Very good. Captain Herman, please inform team member Ray Minkai to report to the flagship Evelia as soon as possible. This is an emergency order. Please convey it as soon as possible." After that, the communication channel from the flagship was cut off. "Looks like we won't have the chance to celebrate our new teammate," Herman said regretfully and looked at Ray Minkai's profile picture. "Ray Minkai, you heard everything?" "Yes, Captain." Ray Minkai nodded, then carried out. "I hope we'll have the chance to fight together again in the future." Herman didn't waste any time and simply let Ray Minkai leave the 5th Squad. "I hope so too. Captain Herman, Peter, Rollo. See you later." After Ray Minkai said goodbye to the 5th Squad that fought alongside him for a short while, he followed AI 63's guidance and arrived near the flagship of the 8th Fleet, Evelia. At first glance, what Ray Minkai saw was not the Evelia, but the ferry docked beside it, as well as the battered Loas, the flagship of the 117th Fleet. Pixie? Could it be that the 117th Fleet was attacked because of me? Uncontrollably, the thought surfaced in Ray Minkai's mind. Chapter 71. Through the transparent glass. Lei Minkai saw an irregular translucent object that seemed neither to exist nor to exist slowly floating in the room behind the glass that was shrouded in countless orange-yellow light beams. After Lei Minkai arrived at the flagship of the 8th Fleet, Evelia, he was brought here by a warrant officer who had been waiting for a long time. It was located in front of a room in a sealed area of the Evelia. The warrant officer who brought Lei Minkai here only told Lei Minkai to wait here before he left in a hurry. Even the confused Lei Minkai watched the mysterious, irregular, translucent object walk for half an hour after the warrant officer left. No one came here to explain everything to Lei Minkai. Lei Minkai looked around the room, which he had checked many times in the past half an hour. He once again confirmed that there was nothing else in the room except for the glass that separated Lei Minkai from the mysterious, irregular, translucent object. Time once again moved forward in Lei Minkai's patience. Maybe a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, or maybe an hour and a half. Just as Lei Minkai's patience was about to reach its limit, there was finally a movement outside. Shwa! The automatic door opened. The first person to appear in front of Lei Minkai was a black-haired young man. Himimi. Behind her was a young woman in a white coat with a chocolate bar in her mouth. Her beautiful brown hair was tied up in a high ponytail. Lei Minkai didn't know her. Sorry to keep you waiting. Lei Minkai, there was a small accident. Himimi's first sentence was a sincere apology. No matter who it was, if they were inexplicably left in a room with nothing but a glass wall and a mysterious object behind for so long, they would definitely feel uncomfortable. Sorry to keep you waiting. Himimi. Lei Minkai shook his head and generously expressed that it was okay. He then looked at the woman in the white coat standing next to Himimi. Ministry of Justice, Sherhui. That's my name. You're the amnesiac unknown person that Mimi mentioned? The woman in the white coat straightforwardly introduced herself and then threw the question back to Lei Minkai. Lei Minkai paused for a moment. He recalled that Himimi mentioned the unknown person when they were chatting before he slowly nodded. If the unknown person is referring to me, then it should be correct. Sherhui from the Ministry of Justice, who is also the woman in the white gown, nodded her head. She took the initiative to extend her right hand and greeted. Hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Ministry of Justice, Sherhui. I believe that in the following time, I should be able to provide some answers to your questions. Lei Minkai heard this and subconsciously looked at Himimi. Seeing Himimi nod, he confirmed that the words of Ministry of Justice, Sherhui, were correct. He also extended his right hand and shook hands with Ministry of Justice, Sherhui. He nodded and said, Hello, Miss Ministry of Justice. I'm Lei Minkai. Call me Ministry of Justice, or Doctor is fine. Ministry of Justice, Sherhui shook her head. The chocolate bar at the corner of her mouth also continuously moved up and down along with her cherry lips. Then I'll call you Doctor. Lei Minkai readily accepted. After Ministry of Justice Sherhui took back her right hand, she put it in her pocket and turned her head to look at the glass wall. She looked at the mysterious, irregular object that was isolated in another room. Lei Minkai, do you have any thoughts about this universe? The first sentence for Ministry of Justice Sherhui made Lei Minkai a bit confused. Universe? Lei Minkai frowned and pondered for a while. However, he couldn't come up with an answer that he could put into words. I don't know. This was Lei Minkai's current answer. Don't worry about it. For most people, no, it should be said that most civilizations don't have a detailed understanding of what the universe is. This is normal. Ministry of Justice Sherhui smiled and comforted Lei Minkai. Then, she raised a new question. If you think of the universe as a piece of information that contains countless numbers of data, what would you think? Or rather, what would you imagine the universe to be? Lei Minkai was stunned again. This question was something that he had never, ever, or it could be said that if he didn't meet Ministry of Justice Sherhui, he would never have thought of or touched upon this question in his entire life. Obviously, with the reminder of Ministry of Justice Sherhui, Lei Minkai once again fell into deep thought. His thoughts uncontrollably began to expand along the lines of Ministry of Justice Sherhui's question. He continued to hypothesize countless possibilities. In the end, when these countless possibilities were gathered together, they formed the answer that was easiest for Lei Mingkai to understand and explain through his words. If you think of the universe as a piece of information, maybe I can imagine it as a picture formed by countless pieces of a puzzle. A picture that can pick up a piece of the puzzle and then put the other pieces of the puzzle in the same position. Pa! Ministry of Justice, sure. Hui snapped her fingers and raised the chocolate bar that she had been holding in her left hand. She waved it like a pointer and said, yes and no, but this is the best answer you can understand. Lei Mingkai, since you've already gotten the answer, you should be able to guess what's inside, right? A puzzle. A puzzle of the universe? Lei Mingkai followed the direction of the chocolate bar and looked at the mysterious, irregular object behind the glass wall. Yes. However, the answer is only half correct. Mimi, why don't you say it? You have nothing to do anyway. Ministry of Justice, sure. Hui suddenly felt a little lazy. She put the chocolate bar back in her mouth and took small bites. Mimi, who intended to be a silent listener, rolled her eyes helplessly and said, this is the reason why the 117th Fleet was attacked by the Abyssal Universe Beta. 13 days ago, the 117th Fleet, which was preparing to return to rest, found this puzzle in an unknown space and time. At the same time, they also found that the Abyssal Universe Beta seemed to be trying to take this puzzle. Therefore, although they didn't know why the Abyssal Universe Beta did this, the 117th Fleet finally took the risk and snatched this puzzle with the principle of not letting the enemy have an easy time. Let me say it. After finishing the chocolate bar, Hui from the Ministry of Justice took out a new chocolate bar from her pocket and continued, in the end, after I compared the test results of this puzzle with your test results, I came up with an answer. I have something to do with this puzzle. Lei Mingkai saw the glimmer of light in the eyes of Ministry of Justice Hui. It was the light that researchers emitted when they saw a research object that was very attractive to them. Lei Mingkai had seen this many times on Roid. Yes, didn't you lose your memory? Perhaps the way to retrieve your lost memories is in there. The Ministry of Justice, Hui, nodded and used the chocolate bar to point at the faintly discernible irregular object. What should I do? Without hesitation or thinking too much, Lei Mingkai asked decisively. The decisiveness shown by Lei Mingkai surprised Mimi and Ministry of Justice Hui. Lei Mingkai, we haven't even told you what to do, and you already agreed? Mimi asked in surprise. This should not only be related to my memory, but also to UFFI and State Zero's injuries. From the professor's question just now, I already had a guess. Are UFFI and State Zero's injuries related to this puzzle? Interesting. Unexpectedly, Ministry of Justice Hui bit the chocolate bar in her hand and said vaguely with a smile, I really didn't expect this. Yes, you guessed it right. The injuries of your little girlfriend and the kitten are related to this puzzle. But how much it is related, we don't know. After Hui swallowed the chewed chocolate bar, she continued, according to Mei Mei's report, you should have had some kind of resonance with the kitten at that time, which triggered a kind of berserk state. The kitten didn't have much energy to begin with, and as a result, it fell into a coma together with your little girlfriend. The way to wake them up is to replenish their energy. Use this. Lei Mingkai pointed at the irregular object. Maybe you can only rely on yourself to explore everything. What we can do is to send you, to be precise, your consciousness into this puzzle. Ministry of Justice Hui gestured and then showed a mysterious smile. Perhaps, when you enter this puzzle, you will die right there and then. After all, what we can do now is to send people in and bring them out at a suitable time. As for what is going on inside, we don't know. Not to mention, we can't provide support to the people inside. Lei Mingkai, I think you should think about it. Mimi reminded him. Lei Mingkai was silent for a while, but his gaze passed through the glass wall and fell on the translucent, irregular object. For some reason, there seemed to be a faint voice coming from the irregular object, as if it was calling out to Lei Mingkai. What should I do? This is not only related to my memory, It is also related to UFFI and State Zero's injuries. I think I have to go. Ray Minkai raised his head and said firmly. Pa! Ministry of Justice, sure. Hui snapped her fingers again. Understood. Worth, you heard it too, right? Start the experiment. Order confirmed. Project number 06, experiment begins. Experimental subject is a human from Earth, adult male. Name, Ray Minkai. Chapter 72. A large and a small crystal container was placed on the vast experiment platform. The small one was about half a meter tall, cylindrical in shape, with a diameter of 30 centimeters. Inside, it was an irregular object that was faintly discernible. This object was firmly fixed in the air by 4 beams of light projected from the top of the cylindrical crystal container. Above that, there were lines of different sizes that were distributed in a certain pattern that connected the cylindrical crystal container to the rectangular crystal container that was about 2 meters long and 50 centimeters wide that was parked 10 meters away. Different from the cylindrical crystal container with the mysterious irregular object, this rectangular crystal container contained a human. Ray Minkai. From a moment he made the decision to enter the interior of this mysterious irregular object, he became the key figure in the experiment of Project number 06, mentioned by Viros and the Ministry of Justice. Looking at Lei Minkai, who had already fallen into a deep sleep in the cuboid crystal container, Minister of Justice Shi Hui bit off the chocolate bar in her hand. While chewing, she said vaguely, Mimi, do you believe in the existence of fate? Mimi, who was also standing beside Shi Hui from the Ministry of Justice and watching the entire experiment project, blinked and shook her head. Then, she nodded. Seeing this, the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui could not help but laugh and scold. What is this? Believe? Or don't believe? I don't know. Mimi said straightforwardly. You don't know? Yes. Although we have discovered the truth that the universe can exist in the form of information, we still don't know what is behind this truth. After the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui sighed, he changed the topic and mentioned another person. However, there's a person's existence that makes me have to believe that fate might really exist. There's a person? Mimi frowned as she recalled the person Shi Hui from the Ministry of Justice mentioned. Speaking of which, this person was also related to Ray Minkai. Sister Shi Hui. Are you talking about the guy with a ridiculously high deviation value? Guy? It seems that even you are jealous. But speaking of which, that guy does have something that makes people jealous. However, she just happens to have that kind of silly and adorable personality. Shi Hui of the Ministry of Justice smiled helplessly. She thought of that face that was enough to make people jealous, but also made people unable to restrain their laughter. Mimi also thought of the same thing. She pursed her lips and looked at Lei Minkai, who was lying in the crystal container. Speaking of which, I was able to complete the mission and find Ray Minkai because of that guy. And the 117th Fleet was able to find this puzzle because of that guy. At this point, Mimi, the proud daughter of heaven, couldn't help but sigh. What a lucky guy. I can't be jealous of him. Okay. Although sometimes it's okay to joke, he has a name. Don't always call him that guy. Minister of Justice Shi Hui waved the half of the chocolate bar in her hand and pretended to hit Mimi, but Mimi reacted quickly and dodged to the other side. Okay, I know. It's about time. We should be able to start now. When Mimi saw that Shi Hui from the Ministry of Justice was about to catch her and teach her a lesson, she immediately changed the topic. Coincidentally, the experiment had reached the point where it could begin. Director, the charging is complete. You can start the connection. Shi Hui's assistant stood up from the experiment table and looked at Shi Hui. Let's begin. The success of project number 06 depends on today and Ray Minkai's own efforts. After Shi Hui threw the last half of the chocolate bar in her hand into her mouth, she decisively gave the order to begin. The experiment begins. In an instant, the entire experimental platform was filled with the sound of commands and the sound of fingers tapping on the keyboard. Then, The low roar of the huge energy gathered together gradually became the main melody on the experiment platform. As the rumbling grew louder and louder, the Ministry of Justice's Sherhui, Himimi, and everyone else who participated in this project turned their gazes to the center of the experiment platform, to the large and small crystal containers. Suddenly, with a flash of light, the irregular object in the cylindrical crystal container turned into a stream of light, rose into the air, and quickly flowed into the rectangular crystal container where Ray Minkai was located along the pipeline at the top of the crystal container. This scene made all the researchers, including Shi Hui from the Ministry of Justice, breathe a sigh of relief and then let out a burst of cheers in unison. Is this a success? Himimi looked around at the crowd that was trying to suppress their voices, but she could hear that they were very excited. Yes, it's a success. Mimi. Next, it depends on Ray Minkai's own efforts and luck. The Ministry of Justice, Shi Hui, who let out a sigh of relief, reached in her pocket and took out 2 chocolate bars. She kept one for herself and handed the other to Himimi. Do you want to eat? Let's celebrate. Himimi looked at the chocolate bar in Shi Hui's hand and shook her head. Celebrating is fine, but this chocolate bar, I can't eat it. In a while, it will be my next concert. I have to maintain my weight. Hearing this, Shi Hui of the Ministry of Justice revealed a surprised expression. Her astonished gaze swept over Himimi's body several times. I say, Mimi, your body is perfect. Why do you have to maintain your weight? Besides, with our current level of technology, even if you were as fat as a pig, you'll have a body that will charm those stinky men in half an hour. Himimi rolled her eyes and put her hands on her hips. This is all natural. The Milky Way sprite taught me this. Okay, you win. Let's not talk about the chat between Shi Hui and Himimi for the time being. Ray Minkai's side was a different scene. Desert, scorching sun. This was everything that appeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. Here, is this the inside of the puzzle? Ray Minkai squatted down and grabbed a handful of hot yellow sand. He was surprised to find that his body seemed to have become smaller. Surprised, Ray Minkai lowered his head and looked around. He reached out and felt around his body. After several confirmations, Ray Minkai finally recognized the fact in front of him. His body seemed to have returned to the state of 6 years old. Whether it was physical strength or endurance, it was far from his strong state before he fell asleep. Now, Ray Minkai's state could be said that if a fierce beast appeared around him, his life would definitely be over. I have to get out of here quickly. Remembering the warning from Shi Hui at the beginning of the experiment, Ray Minkai immediately began to move. Even if he didn't know where he was, staying in the same place for a long time was undoubtedly an act of suicide. However, before he could get far, his body, which was only at the level of a 6-year-old child, went on strike. Ray Minkai couldn't help but stagger a few steps and plunge into the sand. He struggled weakly and rolled down the sand. What's going on? Ray Minkai's consciousness was clear, but this body, which was only at the level of a 6-year-old, was so powerless. No matter how strong Ray Minkai's survival instinct was, this body still fell into a state of stagnation. Until the darkness once again enveloped Ray Minkai, a series of panicked footsteps mixed with the sound of rolling sand quickly approached him. A beast? I didn't expect that I would die here so easily. This was the thought that arose in Ray Minkai's mind at the last moment, when he was unwilling to be shrouded in darkness. However, reality was not that cruel. The moment his body regained its senses, Ray Minkai's consciousness once again broke through the darkness and regained control of this body. Who? Ray Minkai opened his eyes forcefully and gasped for breath. You're awake. At this time, an old and exceptionally kind voice came from the side. Ray Minkai heard the voice and looked over, but the moment he saw the true face of the voice, a wave of heat rose from his eyes without warning. Hey, you child, why are you crying all of a sudden? The figure, who was frightened by Ray Minkai's sudden tears, hurriedly stepped forward and hugged Ray Minkai's thin and small body, and gently comforted him. Okay, Child, everything is over. Although I don't know why you were alone in the desert, you are safe now. In the flickering light of the fire, Ray Minkai saw a head of short silver-white hair, pale but sharp eyebrows, and a pair of deep eyes under the eyebrows that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Are you hungry? I made some hot soup. Do you want to drink some? The old man asked. Ray Minkai opened his mouth. However, it was as if something was stuck in his throat. He couldn't say a single word. He didn't know what it was. His consciousness was very clear, but he couldn't control his body to say anything. It seemed that the old man in front of him had a very deep relationship with the original owner of this body. It seems that you are really hungry. You can't even speak. But it doesn't matter. Drink some hot soup first. The old man didn't care about Ray Minkai's strange behavior. He just went back to the side of the fire and scooped up a bowl of hot soup from a simple pot. Come, be careful of the heat. The old man handed over the hot soup, but suddenly stopped. He exclaimed, Oh, right. I haven't introduced myself yet. The old man put the hot soup next to Ray Minkai, sat down on the ground, pointed to himself, and said with a smile, Child, my name is Lei Ming. I am a citizen of the nearby Sangawa City. What about you? Do you still remember your name? Ray Minkai's consciousness still couldn't control the body. He could only look at him as a bystander and shook his head in response to the old man's question. Is that so? The old man's face darkened when he got the response, as if he was sad for Ray Minkai's encounter. The next moment, the old man suddenly clapped his hands and shouted, That's right. How about I give you a name? If a person doesn't have a name, he can't be called a person. Ray Minkai nodded. Seeing this, the old man immediately thought hard. Finally, he said a name that shocked Ray Minkai. My name is Lei Ming. How about you be my grandson, child? Your name is Ray Minkai. Kai. This is my son's name. From today onwards, I will get to you. How about it? Ray Minkai opened his mouth and was stunned. He suddenly found that he could control this body. The old man thought that Ray Minkai agreed. He hugged Ray Minkai and said, Good child. From today onwards, you are my grandson. Ray Minkai, child. Remember, this is your name, the name of your life. Chapter 73. Time flew by. It had been about 4 years since Ray Minkai met the old man who called himself Lei Ming in the desert. Ray Minkai did not know if the time in the outside world was the same as the time in the world in front of him. He only knew that the body he was using now had grown to the age of 10-year-old. As his appearance grew older, Lei Ming, who treated Ray Minkai as his own grandson, began to bring him some books of this world and taught Ray Minkai the knowledge in the books one by one. One was willing to teach, and the other was in a hurry to understand the current world because of the situation in front of him. Therefore, the two of them were happy teaching and learning diligently. What Lei Minkai cared about was that, as his understanding of this world deepened, his mind seemed to be filled with memories that were both unfamiliar and familiar at the same time, especially in a place that was full of people and not very spacious, called the subway. Ray Minkai saw himself fiddling with a handheld called NDS in his hand. On the small handheld screen, there was a battle animation of a long-fanged lion. Although the appearance looked different, the main body was a battle animation of a long-fanged lion. This is not State Zero, but it is indeed a long-fanged lion. After this battle animation repeated in Ray Minkai's mind a few times, he saw a new scene. However, this new scene was not too new to Ray Minkai. This was because this was the desert journey he had experienced 4 years ago. That was where he met Lei Ming. With the recovery of these memories, Lei Minkai recalled some of the memories he had lost, and that he was not a native of this world, but came from another human world called Earth. Feng Tao. This was Ray Minkai's name in the human world. The moment he recalled this name, Ray Minkai finally understood the current situation from the knowledge of this world taught by Lei Ming's grandfather and the recovered memories. This was a planet called Planet Z. On this planet, humans and giant metal creatures called Zoids lived together. After a long period of evolution, the humans and Zoids on Planet Z build a path of coexistence, forming a unique survival culture, and also created two huge countries that have been in confrontation for a long time. They were the Halic Republic and the Sanaba Empire. Tracing back to the history of the birth of these two countries, Ray Minkai could even find out that the kings of these two countries originated from the same person. Of course, this was already another matter. Now, the Sangwu city that Ray Minkai extended out from was a prosperous city in the Sanaba Empire. Ray Minkai had lived in this city for 4 years and was very familiar with it. From the sound from outside the window, it seemed that the local annual event was held. Listening to the sounds made by the ZODS, Ray Minkai couldn't help but snap out of his memories. He poked his head out of the window and looked at the street outside. Boom! Boom! Low footsteps sounded slowly and rhythmically. At the end of the street, a huge figure was walking through the sky, full of petals. The pair of huge ears, the giant fangs on the left and right corners of the mouth, the thick and long steel trunk with a square weapon at the end, and other characteristics made Ray Minkai recognize at a glance that this was the ancient king Woolly Mammoth, a large Zoids with both offensive and defensive capabilities. They used to be fierce on the battlefield, but at this moment, they had changed into festive costumes and were warming up the streets for the annual festival in Sangwu City. Ray Minkai looked for a while, then withdrew his gaze and returned to the room. He silently looked at the notebook on the table that was used to record the keywords of the recovered memories. The speculation of the Ministry of Justice was correct. The memories that he had lost had indeed gradually recovered during the days he had spent in this world. Although Ray Minkai did not know what would happen in the following days, he vaguely felt a trace of strangeness. This world was not as vast as he had imagined. Even though he had tried many times in the past few years to follow Lei Ming around Sangwu City to observe and collect information, in the end, he discovered a fact. That was, after leaving Sangwu City for a certain distance, Lei Minkai could clearly feel that this body began to disconnect from his consciousness. If it was serious, this body would completely stop moving. Lei Minkai could only watch anxiously, but he couldn't do anything to control it. In desperation, Ray Minkai could only find an excuse to avoid Lei Ming's grandfather's doubts. Fortunately, Lei Ming's grandfather did not care too much. He just thought that these abnormalities were caused by Ray Minkai's fear of the desert. That's it for the time being. Ray Minkai raised his hand to close the notebook and put it back in the drawer. He was about to turn around and go downstairs. Today was Sangwu City's Flame Festival. During this festival, the residents of Sangwu City could not only enjoy delicious food and participate in grand activities, but children between the ages of 10 and 15 could also try to activate the ZODS and even personally drive the Zoids to move around. According to the exploration in the past 4 years, Ray Minkai came to a conclusion. After he personally experienced and tried some things, he was able to expand the movement range with Sangwu City as the center. Therefore, in Ray Minkai's speculation, as long as he could activate and drive a ZODS, then his movement range would be greatly improved. Ray Minkai was confident in this point. After all, in his previous experience, whether it was the Lancelot, the Long Fong Line Zero, or even the Zenata, Ray Minkai had personally driven them. Kai, we're leaving. Lei Ming's grandfather's voice came from downstairs. We'll be there soon. Grandpa. After living together for 4 years, Ray Minkai felt a deep affection and sincere care from Lei Ming. Lei Ming's grandfather really treated Ray Minkai like his own grandson, just like he said on that night 4 years ago. Coming. Grandpa. Ray Minkai closed the drawer, put on his shoes, and quickly stepped on the stairs to go downstairs, and walked on the street with Lei Ming. Although Ray Minkai had personally witnessed the Flame Festival several times before, from the scale and liveliness of the festival, it seemed to have far surpassed the previous festivals. Hee, are you all stunned? Come, there's something more exciting. Lei Ming's grandfather looked at Ray Minkai, who was a little stunned, and smiled dotingly. Then he mysteriously led Ray Minkai all the way, shuttling through the crowd until they arrived at the central area of Sangua City. It was a super large plaza that was specially set up to park large-scale Zoids. Before they reached there, Ray Minkai heard a noise that was louder than the ancient king mammoth that was parading through the streets. It's already started? Ray Minkai frowned and realized that the event he was looking forward to had already started. Yes, it's starting. Lei Ming's grandfather nodded and pulled Ray Minkai into the plaza. After the dazzling sunlight flashed, a wave of hot air rushed towards Ray Minkai amidst the hubbub of voices. Roar! Roar! The loud roar of a beast swept through the entire plaza. The sound of metal joints also mixed with the cheering of the people and spread to the surroundings. What came into view was there were leopard, wolf, insect, and even ferocious-looking dinosaur Zoids. These behemoths were quietly parked at the edge of the open-air parking platform, and the cockpits were opened, waiting for brave children and even teenagers to board and have a taste of driving the Zoids. At this time, in the center of the vast plaza, there were already many children and teenagers who, under the guidance of their parents, had successfully activated and started driving the first Zoids in their lives. Do you want to give it a try, Kai? Lei Ming's grandfather looked at Ray Minkai's eyes as he stared at the Zoids and smiled lovingly. Ray Minkai nodded. Naturally, he would not let go of this opportunity. After all, this was a chance for Ray Minkai to leave Sangua City. Obtaining the Zoids meant that Ray Minkai could expand the scope of his exploration of this world. This meant that Ray Minkai could find a way to restore Euphemia and the White Cat State Zero in the shortest time possible. After all, for years had already passed. Time is of the essence. With this thought in mind, Ray Minkai obtained Lei Ming's permission and followed the staff's instructions and boarded the closest Zoids to him, the Lightning Leopard's cockpit. If he wanted to speed up his exploration of the surrounding area, the Lightning Leopard with excellent maneuverability might be a good choice. Sit on it and put both hands on the control bar. Then close your eyes and try to summon the Lightning Leopard. Under the staff's instructions, Ray Minkai followed the instructions one by one. This was Ray Minkai's first time actually driving a ZODS. Previously, when he was driving the long-toothed lion, Ray Minkai was in a very strange state. His memory of that time was more of a burning anger, and he gave his body to the long-toothed lion, allowing it to do whatever it wanted. However, this time, the attempt in a sober state did not bring any results to Ray Minkai. No matter how Ray Minkai concentrated on summoning the Lightning Leopard, the Lightning Leopard did not respond to Ray Minkai's call. Cannot. Ray Minkai opened his eyes and frowned. However, the staff member standing by the side didn't seem surprised at all as he comforted Lei Minkai. Kid, don't be discouraged. After all, not every Zoids is suitable for you. Although the Lightning Leopard looks very cool, with your current body, I'm afraid that you won't be able to adapt to the Lightning Leopard's speed. Let's try another ZODS. Grandpa Lei Ming, who was watching from the side, also nodded. Although he had the attitude of letting Ray Minkai choose, in reality, Grandpa Lei Ming did not want Ray Minkai to drive the Lightning Leopard at such a young age. This ZODS was extremely taxing on the body. Ray Minkai had no choice but to leave the Lightning Leopard and switch to other ZODS. However, when the sun went down, Ray Minkai found that he could not activate any of the Zoids parked in the center of the square. Even the Sky Silkworm ZODS, which was widely recognized as the most versatile ZODS, could not be activated. This fact hit Lei Minkai hard in the head. Don't be discouraged. Kai, you're only 10 years old this year. You should know that little Gaza from next door only managed to activate a Zodiac train when he was 15 years old. Grandpa Lei Ming's comforting words did not make Ray Minkai feel any relief. Instead, he suddenly showed an anxious expression. No, Grandpa, there's not much time left. Ray Minkai's words stunned Grandpa Lei Ming. Then, while Ray Minkai lowered his head to think of a way to break through this stage, Lei Ming raised his head to look at the sky. He looked at the starry sky and sighed. Indeed, there's not much time left. Hmm? Grandpa, what are you talking about? Ray Mingkai, who was thinking hard, seemed to hear Grandpa Lei Ming sigh. No, nothing. Let's go back for dinner. Kai, although you didn't manage to activate the Zoids today, we still have a luxurious meal at home. Let's go back. Grandpa, this was perhaps the most beautiful night Lei Mingkai had ever had in this world. When the sun rose, Sangwu City, which was still immersed in the festive atmosphere of yesterday's grand festival, welcomed the endless darkness. What's going on? Ray Mingkai's body shook and woke up from his sleep. He scrambled to the window and looked out at the noisy street outside. The moment Ray Mingkai's gaze landed on the sky far away from Sangwu City, the hair on his body suddenly stood up. He saw that the sky, which was supposed to be white and the sun was rising, was now filled with endless darkness. In the darkness, Ray Mingkai was very familiar with the ominous, abhorrent, and disgusting blood fire. Abyss. There was no way Lei Mingkai would mistake that aura. He had once fought with the abyss monster that was called Asmodai by the White Cat State Zero in Lulusia World. He would never forget this aura. Looking at the darkness filled with blood fire, Ray Mingkai gritted his teeth and his eyes flashed with unwillingness. Even though he was not afraid of this ominous abyss and had an incomparably strong will to fight, the reality was that the current Lei Mingkai was only a 10-year-old brat. He did not even have his own ZODS. Such a kid, let alone fighting, he might not even have the strength to escape. All of a sudden, the door opened. Kai, quick, come with me. Grandpa Lei Ming shouted with an anxious face. Ray Mingkai's eyes flashed. The belated Ray Mingkai finally realized the strangeness of Grandpa Lei Ming. It seemed that Grandpa Lei Ming knew that the abyss would appear from the beginning. The state he was showing now was not at all like an old man who had lived in a peaceful era and suddenly encountered a strange situation. Okay, Grandpa. Ray Mingkai did not ask. He just walked to the drawer and took out the notebook he had written in the past few years. After putting on his bag, he followed behind Grandpa Lei Ming and left the house that he had lived in for 4 years. Grandpa, where are we going? Ray Mingkai looked at the surrounding people who were panicking, but clearly had some purpose in their actions. He could not help but ask, leave this place. Kai, this city's mission has arrived. Grandpa Lei Ming only replied faintly. He silently pulled Ray Mingkai through the streets and came to a central street full of train worms. When Ray Mingkai saw the crowded train worms, he immediately realized that the city had probably predicted the appearance of the abyss. Otherwise, there would not be such a panicked and orderly situation. All of a sudden, Lei Mingkai felt a warm sensation on his head. It was Grandpa Lei Ming's hand. He lovingly stroked Ray Mingkai's head. His gaze was gentle and had a trace of pity. Kai, from today onwards, you have to live alone. You have to remember, no matter what happens, you have to be strong and live on. Grandpa, I'm afraid Grandpa can't accompany you anymore. Ray Mingkai was startled. He immediately realized something. His gaze quickly swept through the crowd. He found that there were many people in the same situation as him. Among them, the Gisa family's grandpa, Lei Ming mentioned before, was also crying and hugging Grandpa Lei Ming's leg. Grandpa, have you been abandoned? Ray Mingkai's voice was hoarse. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Ray Mingkai's appearance was only 10 years old, but his mature mind immediately came up with a terrifying guess. No, Kai, don't think about it like that. Grandpa Lei Ming slapped Ray Mingkai's shoulder. The force was so heavy that it made Ray Mingkai feel pain. A trace of reluctance appeared in Grandpa Lei Ming's eyes. However, he still firmly held onto Ray Mingkai's shoulder and warned, Kai, I know you have a lot of thoughts, but today, I won't allow you to slander the Empire. Listen, Kai, compared to the huge Empire, our existence is nothing but lowly and insignificant. However, our existence is a component that allows the Empire to continue existing. We are the gears that form the huge machine that is the Empire. Grandpa Laming took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Kai, you're a genius. This isn't the first time that the darkness in the sky has appeared. The existence of this Sangawu city is for today. We're already old. We can't run anymore. Therefore we, the old and useless gears, can once again turn, in order for the Empire to continue existing." While speaking, Grandpa Lei Ming reached out his hand and tapped on Rei Mingkai's heart. After passing an object that was wrapped in a white cloth to Rei Mingkai, Grandpa Lei Ming hugged Rei Mingkai tightly. "Kai, thank you. Thank you very much for accompanying this rotten old man for these 4 years. Now, let me fulfill my son's final wish." Grandpa, Rei Mingkai didn't know what to say anymore. Even though he was already an adult, his soul was still unable to respond to Grandpa Lei Ming's words. "Bada, Kai, I'll leave him to you." Grandpa Lei Ming clenched his teeth and pushed Rei Mingkai to the robust man who walked over from behind. "Colonel, you should come with us." The robust man named Bada hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but say, "Shut up, Bada. I didn't know that my son and I had taught you how to become a coward." Grandpa Lei Ming shouted angrily and lowered his head to look at Rei Mingkai. Although his eyes were filled with tears, his expression was abnormally firm. "Kai, remember, we are the gears of the Empire. No matter how lowly, how weak, how old the gears are, they still have their backbone. Kai, remember, the gears also have their own backbone. Even at the moment of my death, I can't abandon this ambition and this backbone." Grandpa Lei Ming's words were not the only thing that could be heard in the rolling sand, but also the sounds of sobbing in the carriage. Grandpa, Mommy, why did you leave Grandpa behind?" The young children didn't want to leave their elders and stay by themselves. They kept crying and yelling to their parents. Rei Mingkai couldn't help but choke with sobs as tears quietly rose in his eyes. The feelings he had for Grandpa Lei Ming over the past few years were not fake. He was also unwilling to leave Grandpa Lei Ming behind, but with a soul that was far more mature than the young children, he couldn't cry out loud. Sangawu City. This is our Empire's third line of defense. It has already been 5 years since the last line of defense fell. This time, I don't know how long Sangawu City can last. Bada stood beside Rei Mingkai and looked at the distant city through the rolling sand. "Bada, can you tell me the truth?" Rei Mingkai opened his mouth and asked. Bada glanced at Rei Mingkai, was silent for a moment, and slowly opened his mouth. Sangawu City's mission is the same as the last line of defense, to create an isolation zone that will last for at least a few years to stop the invasion of the unknown Asmodai. Asmodai, this familiar word once again sounded in Rei Mingkai's ears, and the missing memories resurfaced. It was a ray of light that could compete with the sun and the moon. It was an earth-shattering roar. The earth was torn apart, the sky was shattered, and nothing could survive that shocking change. The only ones who witnessed all of this were the numerous Zergs and their passengers that were parked thousands of miles away from the area, and the tearful child that was holding the only thing left behind by his loved ones. "No, Grandpa's mission." Bada looked at the enlightened Rei Mingkai and silently nodded. It turned out that Grandpa Lei Ming and the others stayed in Sangawu City to deal with the Asmodai until the moment of the shocking change. Rei Mingkai clenched his teeth tightly. At this moment, after connecting everything, he finally understood. This body was not someone else's, it was his own body. This was not a puzzle of the universe, but his own memories. No wonder he could not walk out of Sangawu City's perimeter. It turned out that in this memory, the child named Rei Mingkai had never seen a map other than Sangawu City. Without experiencing it, how could he know? Rei Mingkai lowered his head to look at the object wrapped in white cloth in his hand, twisted the corner of the white cloth, gritted his teeth, and pulled with force. Swoosh! A red light flashed, and Rei Mingkai's eyes lit up. This is not ambition, nor is it courage. It is just following my heart. Right. You think the same, right? Kai. Rei Mingkai. The white cloth fell, and in his hand was the red-eyed lion head badge. State 0. If you really have a connection with this world, then wake up for me. Let's take revenge on the abyss that destroyed this world. Wake up. State 0. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.